Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Waterloo Special Council meeting Monday, June 18th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. Could I have disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general neighborhood? Seeing none. First up is staff report. Item A, outdoor sports field implementation update, strategy update. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Mayor Jaworski and members of council. The report in front of you this evening is IPPW 2017-035. Staff would like to present council with an update on this project to transition Waterloo Park Diamonds number 1 and 2 from their current use to a proposed festival heart over the next 3 years. On January 16th, 2017, Council approved report IPPW 2017-003. This report proposed a 3-year transition to the 2 existing baseball diamonds in Waterloo Park, number 1 and 2, from their current use over to a proposed festival heart space in accordance with the Waterloo Park Master Plan. At that time, staff recommended a 3-year process because we knew it was going to take some time to develop solutions and engage the community. We're also taking our time because these diamonds are we recognize them as a cultural fixture in the park, and they're very well used, and we needed the time to undertake those items. Over the past approximately 9 years, there have been several council approved documents that have led up to where we are today. Recreation and Leisure Services Master Plan, the Waterloo Park Master Plan, Outdoor Sports Field Strategy, Culture Plan, and then the implementation of the festival area frontage. Each document speaks to the need and justification for the change. Let's give you an outline of the project process that we're following. We are sort of following an environmental assessment process, although we don't have to do an environmental assessment for this project. We are following that framework. So phase 1 was to introduce or create a problem and opportunity statement for the project and introduce that to the community, engage baseball stakeholders, undertake minor standard of care improvements to various diamonds, engage the community, and update council in June, which is today's meeting. Phase 2 will be to, over the next, between now and fall, will be to identify opportunities around the city, evaluate those various opportunities that align with the sports field strategy, develop preferred options, engage the community on those alternatives, select a preferred alternative, and then update council in the fall. It's important to recognize that staff are working with various baseball organizations at the board level. Kitchener-Waterloo Minor Boys Softball, Waterloo Minor Girls Softball, Waterloo Minor Baseball Association, Waterloo Rec Co-ed, Slow Pitch, Major League Summer Baseball, Laurier Baseball League. And so phase 1 and 2 are critical phases as they shape the rest of the project going forward. Phase 3 and phase 4 will happen in 2018, between 2018 and 2020, where alternative design concepts for the preferred solution will start to be generated. There'll be further opportunities for stakeholder engagement at that time, and then a final report in June 2018. And then into phase 4 will be detailed design and implementation. So the problem or opportunity statement that was developed for the project was as follows. To meet future baseball needs, the city is undertaking a process to identify possible opportunities to relocate ball diamonds 1 and 2 from Waterloo Park to other locations in the city. And I'm just providing a framework of the phase 1 public engagement. The Waterloo Chronicle was utilized before any public meeting to introduce the project. Engage Waterloo topic was created, which we received about 150 comments on, which was great. Project website and email address. We held a Laurelwood Neighborhood Association meeting, a Laurelwood public meeting, an Eastbridge Neighborhood Association meeting, and a public meeting in Eastbridge, and then our last meeting for phase 1, which was the one in Uptown at Knox Church for Waterloo Park. Appendix A and B, the report provides a bit more information on the feedback to date. I'll just give a quick summary of feedback. We couldn't pack it all into the report because we did receive an incredible amount of comments, and we have all those documented in our files. To start with Eastbridge and Laurelwood, there were a number of concerns expressed regarding the impact of introducing ball diamond use in these communities. Main concerns were increased traffic, on-street parking, noise, lack of washrooms, loss of valued community space, among others. Uptown, a number of residents in general expressed a concern about removing well-used ball diamonds from Waterloo Park when baseball demand is so high. The park diamonds were cited as being easily accessible, equipped with washrooms, adequate parking, and an important element of the park landscape. From ball groups generally understand the city needs to build the festival area. However, they want to ensure that the 2 lit ball diamonds are created or replaced in other locations before these are taken out of the inventory. So as I say, we do have all the comments that we've received to date in our files. We've received over 170, probably plus, comments on the project so far, and we'll post those to the city website shortly. Some pressures and analysis to date. I want to highlight the lack of available land in the city of Waterloo. We are at our build-out limit, as most people know, but there is limited opportunities to replace Diamonds 1 and 2 in the city. Planning for the future now makes sense, and it'll put us in a better position to respond to future needs over time. And the city, we should try to insulate ourselves from sports field inventory from the fluctuations over time when ball goes up as it is right now, or if soccer or another sport comes up over the next 4 or 5 years. Eastbridge and Gatestone or Laurelwood Park do represent opportunities to expand our ball diamond inventory. However, based on the concerns we've received to date, more work is needed to address these neighborhood concerns. Staff recommend carrying these alternatives forward to phase 2 so we can evaluate them further and work with the neighborhoods to try and address their concerns. Installing lights at an existing facility is an opportunity that we've highlighted. Rim Park Diamonds number 4, 5, and 6, which are north of University Avenue, will be evaluated in phase 2, including a public engagement process, and that will help to ease the pressure of making this transition. Just an update on our progress to date on some of our minor improvements that the ball groups highlighted should be done. Some of these are highlighted as part of the sports field strategy in 2012, and some of them are carrying over and identified in the last couple of years. Not going to go through all of them, but Regency, there was work done on all these diamonds to kind of regrade and reprofile, fix fencing, small things, minor improvements, low-hanging fruit that we were able to do with the budget that we have, and make a significant difference in the sports field inventory for players and youth to sustain their programs on. Further work, I think, is needed based on the feedback we've received from groups on school diamonds and in the city-owned inventory. They're not major works. They're small things like renovating the lip between infield and outfield, again, fixing fencing, optimizing the size of diamonds, things like that, to make sure they're responding to current needs. I'll just go through a couple slides here, inventory and analysis of Eastbridge and Laurelwood. These were presented at the public information sessions, and this is Eastbridge Park. And I've just overlaid a multi-purpose B diamond in the park, which is the white line there. That was conceptually introduced as a diamond footprint that we would be able to use in that neighborhood. It fits on the site nicely and ensures buffer space between the outfield and neighboring homes. Some concerns were addressed or highlighted between the playground and the ball diamond use. The other major concern I think people have is replacing the current open and free play that's currently happening on there with programmed play. That's important to recognize. and on-street parking, traffic generation, and things like that are all highlighted in the report, are also concerns. But I just wanted to show the inventory analysis for the benefit of the community. Laurelwood Park. Again, some of the same issues were coming up at Laurelwood as they were in Eastbridge. Traffic generation, on-street parking. The major issue we heard with on-street parking is kids, getting out of cars and running across the street without checking. And the two roads, Gatestone and Eastbridge Boulevard, were highlighted as carrying significant amount of traffic at that time when a ball game could be taking place. And so that was recognized as a conflict. I should note that the Laurelwood Public School gym teacher sets up a football field on this field footprint, and the neighborhood association wanted to make sure that wasn't going to cause a conflict if we were to advance the diamond footprint. And we don't think it will, but we will review that in phase 2. And then some of the other concerns like noise, no washrooms, cut-through pedestrian traffic was highlighted actually from a couple of the side streets coming through the actual homes into the diamond. And some folks mentioned it would be more comfortable if there were more sites being considered, not just this one. So that kind of gives a bit of a snapshot of where we're at and an update to the project, and be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, John. Questions for staff at this time? Councillor Burke first, Councillor Durrell second.
John, looking at these, the footprints for Gatestone and Eastbridge, and it says multi-purpose A diamond not recommended, so I'm assuming you can't build a full-size baseball diamond 300 foot down the line in that footprint, right?
Correct.
So the max would be 240?
Sorry?
So the maximum would be about 240 feet?
I have the diamond sizes here, but yeah, the multi-purpose A is just simply too big, it drives us towards kind of an adult programming profile, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to at least bring it down to a B, so you're encouraging the 13-year-old kids to play on it. That would be a maximum age on a multi-purpose B diamond. There is a diamond that's smaller than that, which is T-ball diamond. It's a little bit smaller than the B. So yeah, we didn't want to go to the A because there's no buffer space between the outfield and residential homes, and just cause problems.
So just to be clear, there's no idea of adult programming on these two diamonds. It would be below the age of 13, right?
Correct.
Now, I have a question about just this transition of the diamonds. Waterloo 1 and 2 are, I'm going to guess here, 95% adult programming, right?
Correct. Yep.
And do we have enough diamonds in our inventory now to satisfy the needs of the youth programs? Or would we have to find diamonds or do we have to find diamonds for them to play on anyways, regardless of what happens to 1 and 2, since they're not youth program diamonds?
I'm going to defer that over to Jim, if that's okay, or Darcy.
Through you, Chair Jarowski, to Councillor Burke. Currently, right now, our youth programming are on wait lists and trying to find other diamonds to use. So there is a demand for the youth. There currently isn't room right now to fit adults on other diamonds.
That's all for now. Wait for a bit.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Jaworski. Mr. Griffin, can you go back one, please?
Yep.
So I'm just trying to understand the parking along the side here. On Eastbridge Road, where the parking is, it doesn't look like it's actually around any of the homes. Is that correct?
There is on-street parking, I believe, allowed in front of those homes. There is a bus stop, though, approximately right here in front of Eastbridge Park.
Okay.
So 30 meters on each side of that bus stop, there wouldn't be on-street parking allowed. But on the other side of the street and in front of those homes, I believe there is on-street parking allowed.
On street, okay.
And so that's the conflict that's coming up, is
Just the
parking in
homes
front of driveways and
on the
things
one
like
side.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And is it common for these, I guess 13 and under is what you said, below age 13, to have those in? I mean, I know my son plays and we play in neighborhoods, so is that quite common then to be playing in neighborhood
I think it is. I mean, it was highlighted as a concern, so we're just bringing the information to council tonight. But we are trying to work with the ball groups on these two diamonds to see if they can park at the schools. But the neighborhood did have concerns about that as well. Just the information disseminating down to parents and making sure that that was going to happen. So, as I say, I'm just bringing the information forward. So,
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Freeman, please.
Thanks for your presentation, John.
No problem.
So with regard to Eastbridge, so the concerns that have been raised for folks in my neighborhood is that they really are worried about some of the older teens can really hit the ball. And I think, a solution, I think that as you look, because the recommendation tonight is not to approve the use of the diamond, but rather to evaluate further the programming.
Correct.
And I think that it would be really helpful in your evaluation to really narrow your programming review to T-ball, because that is a significant concern for this neighborhood. And I know that when you met with the Eastbridge Neighborhood Association and when I was there, that they asked if staff could look to see if there's some strategies that could be implemented that encourage, that basically either makes it no parking during a baseball game or something like that. They seem to be really worried about that on-street parking. It's kind of tricky because some other people have emailed me and said, no, we want that space for parking for Eastbridge events.
Right.
But we don't want that space for parking for non-Eastbridge events. So it's a little bit tricky to try to find a balance there. But I think that putting a little bit more consideration to what are the tools. I mean, the city can say that everyone's committed to parking at the public school, but we don't really have tools to make that happen unless we sign it and ask bylaw to be out at the games, and that's tricky.
Yep.
And then the other thing that people raised with, as you mentioned in your presentation, was this notion of having it available for passive recreation. And so I think in any reports that come forward, it would be helpful to get a sense of what's the percentage of time that it might be programmed and what's the percentage of time that it's available for passive recreation. Okay. And in addition to that too, I think that there's confusion too about how late the diamond would be used. And if you focused on a T-ball use, for example, then there might be some assurances that could be put into place to say that the use of this diamond would occur. I don't know what the start time typically is, whether it's 6 o'clock till 7:30 or.
I think it's about 6:30. 6:30 to 8 is kind of
so
the time frame of an unlit diamond.
6:30 till 8:30, yep. and then depending on the pressures, is it just weeknights? Is it 3 nights a week? But just some thoughts around that too, so that we can at least go back to the neighborhood and help them to understand what is totally the expectation. And because when we say it's an age group up to age 13, I think a lot of people can think of some strapping 13-year-old lads that could really move that ball into backyards.
Yeah. No, we'll certainly review the T-ball size diamond in phase 2. I think that's a great idea.
So, I have received emails from individuals in the neighborhood that would like to see us try to accommodate some kind of programming in here, but they're also reflective of the concerns that their neighbors have for that space. And I think I've already asked, but I know that there's traffic studies that speak to the impact on traffic calming for on-road, like cars parked on road. And I think it's one thing to say that it creates traffic calming and another to actually be able to demonstrate that through studies. So if we want to use that, if we want to reference that data, we should make it available.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from council before I have some? John, in the list, I know there's the school near me, Mary Johnson Public School, that they do play ball on occasionally. I'm not sure who that's through or how that's organized, but that would be an example of a school use. So are there more opportunities to partner with schools, or do we already? Hi, Jim.
If I may, George, your question. Yes, we have worked with Waterloo Minor Baseball and our community groups to meet with them to say what fields work for you. And they've identified some schools that would be most advantageous for them to utilize. That means we work with members. We'll put together an agreement in terms of utilizing the space, along with how we will maintain the field. So the city will take some responsibility for the backstop, for the bases and the grooming that goes on. But of course, it will require some negotiation based on the time of it. So each school has been looked at or scrutinized by ourselves, and Darcy and John have both visited some of the sites as well to see what needs to be done. Some is just minor upgrades, we feel, and minor ball has indicated that with us. It'll also depend on the group that wants to use it, i.e. T-ball or younger. So we are pursuing all those opportunities in order to facilitate the demand that Darcy spoke about in terms of the increasing number of participants that wish to play baseball going forward. So it's a really, I think Councillor Freeman really nailed it when she said it's a tricky proposition, because it's about balancing between the needs of our groups, the needs of our community members, the youth, how they play baseball and their level of play, along with the schools and our decreasing inventory. So we're looking at all kinds of options to facilitate a full use. Members as well, the Laurelwood neighborhood associations, the Eastbridge groups, to hear their stories, to hear their needs, and to facilitate how can we work with them to meet the needs of our growing demands of our community.
I think, from a school standpoint, I think every school has a parking lot of some sort, so somehow that seems to, a lot of the concerns seem to be about on-street parking. So as part of this consultation, I get a few emails and children playing baseball in Waterloo Park, but my understanding is those are adult league fields.
They are, you're correct. And that's not the goal. We're not trying to take youth programming out of the system at all.
And then subsequent to that, then some people think, oh, we're trying to take the adults and move a beer drinking league. Because adult league, moving them to Rim Park in a lighted field, and taking the Rim Park usage and distributing it elsewhere as part of the study. So that's
trying to match. We're trying to match capabilities with the size of the diamonds. Right. That's kind of the goal. So
is it fair to say that through this process over the next 4 years, we will have as much, if not, baseball capability?
I absolutely hope so. I think that is the sure.
The and accommodate as much as we can all the various groups and their needs, along with the needs of the community.
And we would continue to pursue school sites as possible as part of this, or as separate from this? We continuously do that.
That would be as part and parcel of the entire package. So if our footprint of our inventory may include 10 diamonds with the public board, 5 diamonds with a separate school board, depending on through the efforts of ourselves and Waterloo Minor Baseball. That would be our goal.
Okay. And then
other sports groups, yeah.
Okay. And then this question may be for planning staff or somebody else, or maybe Mark, to listen in on. But what's the history behind them? When were they put in? Why were they put in, if not for program baseball? Anybody know?
I'll defer that to Jim or Mark.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, Councillor Freeman has. Yes, Jim? We'll go to Councillor Freeman, who knows the answer.
Well, I'm not sure. I was looking at my notes here while you were speaking. I apologize.
Oh, in some of our neighborhood parks, we have baseball diamonds, or at least remnants of baseball diamonds, but they were unprogrammed. Why were they put in the first place as baseball diamonds as opposed to just free space? Out of interest.
I'm sorry, I don't know the full
We'll
answer
go
to
with
that one.
Mr. Rapp.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski, for the question. Typically, parkland dedication through subdivisions, we take the 5%, and then there is, at that time, a discussion internally as to what the needs might be for that neighborhood, and quite often as the neighborhood has evolved, there hasn't been anywhere for kids to do anything, and so quite often we have put in really a rough ball diamond. And a good example would be in Westville Park. It's in a swim pond too, but it's at least something for kids to pick up, game, a place to go. So that quite often has been how they've evolved over time.
Okay, much like a playground.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. No, go ahead, Councilor Freeman.
Well, for Eastbridge was programmed years ago. So staff may know a Mr. Karen who used to be the parks director here, and he lived right behind the diamond, and he told me in a meeting that it was programmed for a number of years, and the whole time it was programmed, they didn't have trouble with what's the word I'm looking for. No, it wasn't just the fly balls, it was loitering, like of people that came into the space and loitered and graffitied the electrical panels and everything. And so when I was first elected, he came to me and asked whether we would consider reprogramming crime prevention through environmental design process, because when you bring people to a space, a wide open space like this, on a semi-regular basis, it creates natural surveillance, and that in turn helps with untoward behavior.
Excellent. Down with untoward behavior. Okay. Here tonight. Okay, thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Jim, Darcy. We have 5 registered delegates tonight. First up is Aaron Homustash. Welcome, Aaron. Followed by Aaron Bauer. Aaron Onasta or Aaron Bauer? Okay. Aaron H.
So I have 10 minutes to speak?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Just let me know when to start my timer, please.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you're ready.
I've only had a few days to prepare for this, and so trying to organize everything here. Where can I put this? Is this okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
All right. Just the rest of you to see.
We normally don't allow props, but that's
Not
just...
very often you get to see a Waterloo native who makes it to the major leagues.
That's right. Okay, your time is on.
All right. Ten minutes really isn't a lot of time to express, wow, the passion that I have for baseball and sports. I've just spent the last 15 years traveling around the world playing baseball. As you can see up in these pictures here, this was a picture of me in 1993. That year, Joe Carter hit the most monumental home run and left a legacy in Canadian culture, Canadian heritage. That inspired me to play baseball. That inspired me to chase my dream. My mom's here today. She's the paparazzi over here taking pictures. She's a proud mom and a proud son, and I'm here to represent the baseball community, the softball community, the slow pitch community, the Wilfrid Laurier University League. I'm here to represent people with children and to support people of other children as well too. So thank you everybody for giving me this opportunity to be here today. Can we change the slides? How do we do this? First time here. Okay, so baseball goes back to 1889, earliest records, guys. 1889. This is from Friday. It looks like I can't see. 1948, Kitchener Waterloo record. This date on the front of this cover of this, Waterloo officially turned into a city. In 1889, these guys were playing baseball, and so from every generation since then, we've had baseball and softball in Waterloo Park. Now, the problems with all of these fields, obviously I'm going to take 5 seconds. These are not suitable replacements. Obviously, we've determined that from John Griffin and his information that he's given. The fields that are in Waterloo Park, 1 and 2, are A-grade fields. We don't have that. Second thing I want to mention is you're talking about loitering. You're talking about, this is called people using our community and field facilities in our parks and our land. That is what every single human being, man, woman, boy, girl, I guess transgender now, that's been passed as well too. So everybody is properly represented in our baseball community and has the opportunity to use these fields. The main thing that you guys are talking about is when the tenants, I think you're focusing only on the tenants of who uses it. As soon as somebody walks off of the field, who's a tenant, there's a father and a son who's out on the field. That's not loitering, that's using public space. Now with these fields here, specifically, you're the main one. I'm going to move on from that. This is not a replacement. This is not suitable. Now we talk about this land here. Where's my master plan? In the master plan, this says in point 2.3.3 land uses, explore opportunities for more unstructured free leisure play by phasing out of organized sports in the park, soccer, baseball, and cricket. That means that all sports will be taken away from Waterloo Park. All 4 fields in the Waterloo Park, or the Waterloo Park Master Plan from 2009 states that all 4 fields will be removed. This is a fact. This is in this document. It's also a fact that all programming and sports programming for organized sports will be removed from the park. So, possible solution here. If you look to the left where the band shell is, that's designated as festival space. We need to use that festival space. We can't get rid of these fields. Obviously, it's very clear. The numbers in Canada are growing. They're growing internationally. Those are the facts. Quick question to Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff. Do you have the exact numbers of participants in all of the user groups? In baseball, softball, and slow
in your 10
pitch.
minutes, you just continue to present till your time is up. You present the council.
Okay, so this is my question. Now, do I specify to somebody specific or to council?
You don't. We ask you questions. You present right now.
I don't get a chance to ask questions?
No, you present. You can ask staff questions tomorrow morning or stuff like that if you wish.
Okay. Okay. So, to make my point, we need to relocate the fields to proper facilities. To make another point, Bechtel Park is at threat. This field is also in threat. The Bechtel Park plan also is a threat to be removed. The cemetery space is moving, so this is something that's not immediate. This is down the road. The 4 fields that are at risk in Waterloo Park, only 2 are currently proposed to be at risk. So I just want to make that clear to everybody here, that the 2 fields, 3 and 4, where the Little League players play next to the tennis courts, those have not been proposed to be removed. However, in the Waterloo Park Master Plan, it's a part of the Waterloo Park Master Plan to phase out all organized sports in the park, including their facilities. How much time do we have here? So this is a baseball facility. If we're talking about relocating a facility, this is what we need to talk about. Right? This is not acceptable, right? This is what we need to do. This is where we're at right now. We do not need to lose 4 fields in Waterloo Park. We cannot afford to lose Bechtel Park Field as well. That's 5 diamonds. So we need to actually come up with a real strategy and be engaged in this actual strategy for baseball in our city. Yeah? What I'm asking is that you defer the approval of the Outdoor Sports Field Strategy Implementation Report IPPW 2017-035 and Waterloo Park Master Plan implementation to a later date. This will allow time for the proper statistical analysis of the natural, social, economic, environmental, and health impacts to be reviewed and shared with the citizens of Waterloo so that everybody is properly informed and engaged, because this affects every single one of us. I feel that this plan to remove any and all sports fields and its organized sports programs without having proper statistical analysis, which from my understanding hasn't been presented in any of these documents in terms of health, social, natural, economic, environmental. It seems like they're just opinions at this point. There haven't been statistical analysis to provide this. And without having this proper statistical analysis, suitable alternative locations and feedback from the public is not policy making. Some other concerns that I have: inconsistencies and flaws in the current framework of plans linked with the Community, Culture and Recreation Services Master Plan, the Culture Plan, and the Waterloo Park Master Plan. The trend that participation in baseball, softball, and soccer is increasing every year. We're already at full capacity. We need to grow. We need to invest. I am here today to propose that I will come in as a consultant, work with Major League Baseball, work with Baseball Canada, and get millions of dollars to provide for our children, your grandchildren, and for the next 10 generations, so that we're celebrating baseball in Waterloo Park at all the fields in 2031, all together as a great celebration of our heritage, because when we go back to it, this is what's important for people to know. And we have a professional coach here in Waterloo now to show the kids the pathway to be self-confident. Our young boys and our young girls all need to have this opportunity in sport, in education, in arts, in science, in math, in music. Heritage Canada website. I was paid by Team Canada. Oh, I want to just pull this one out as well too. This is what I was most proud of right here. I guess I'm done. But this is what I'm most proud of. On a final note, Mr. Mayor, I just want to tell you that I'm here today to retire my jersey.
We don't allow applause nor booing or anything like that in the council chambers.
Thank you.
Because there could be people with other opinions. So just hold back on the enthusiasm.
Just want to final. Yes. I'm retiring today. I'm done with baseball as a player. I'm here to be a public servant for the community of Waterloo. This is one of my proudest moments. I'm not giving away this one, because this one's awesome. This is probably this being in Canada and having the opportunities that we have. In Venezuela, they're fighting and shouting. We have this opportunity to be a democratic society, to make our country and cities better, to be actually sustainable and have solar pathways in Waterloo Park, to have a science center in Waterloo Park. I'm not going to go on and on and on, but I just want to say that, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if I can give this to you, and I'll let you
Your mom loves that shirt. Your mom loves that jersey. Keep it for her.
Well, this is going. She has all the memories are in her heart.
Okay.
So this
Thank
is
you.
going to the city of Waterloo.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Aaron.
very much.
Thank you, Aaron.
If you have any questions,
Thanks
please.
for your enthusiasm. Questions from councilors for Aaron? Yeah, Councilor Durrell.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Jaworski. Well, I first of all, amazing to have you here at our council chambers, and congratulations on all the success you've had. When I look at this picture, I think that it's amazing that all these young boys get to look up to somebody who's actually played in the big leagues, you know, just like Tom Cochran says. So thank you very much. It's really important to have passion for something. I think what I'd like to see happen, and my questions, I guess, to you would be, I think, are there compromises? Are there ways that we can all work together to come to the same conclusion? And I'm sure you heard Mayor Jaworski talking to our staff earlier, where he was saying, you know, if all goes according to plan and we continue to work together, we'll have more baseball fields in 3 years than we do now. So I think those are positive things. And so I'm curious, like, how much give and take is there in your leadership role that you're willing to lead some of these young players and work with the city to come up with good results?
I came back in December after 15 years of traveling around the world, and my mission was to develop baseball in Waterloo. My grandma passed away, and that's what brought me home. That was the only thing that would bring me back to Canada. And she was a World War II survivor. She was from Warsaw, Poland. And she gave me the opportunity to be alive. And I want to share the passion that she had, the energy that she had, to the future of our city. Yeah? When I look at these kids and the impact that I have on these kids every single day, hundreds of kids. Facilities in Waterloo. I want to bring all associations together, not football and basketball, to build that unity here, to be a sports city. This is what I think the vision for the future needs to be. Yeah, we need to build a sports city so that every single person that comes to our city is active, and they know this. Make that a part of our culture. Yeah, I think that a part of the thing that might be misleading from I won't go on forever. I could, but I think it says here in point 2.33, after removing organized sports in the park, it says here, establish venues and amenities with a focus on arts, culture, and heritage, children's play and learning, and youth play. I've traveled to over 50 countries. I've lived all around the world. I've lived in Europe. I've lived in the United States. I've seen it all, yeah? And I want to bring all those great ideas back. We're not afraid. We're all from different parts of the world. Everybody here has a mom or a dad or a grandma or grandma that was from another part. Canadian heritage is accepting that we're Canadian, but we come from somewhere else. It's different than the Americans, right? Now, working together with our partners, we're going to make this happen. We're going to work with Major League Baseball to make this happen. We've got that power here to do it, right? We've got the platform to do it. I'm going to be the guy that's going to champion this, right?
I see another question from Councilor Burke.
I share the passion for the game. I share it myself. I played for a while. I coached girls softball in this town for 20 years. So I am absolutely all in when it comes to finding as many fields as possible for kids to play at. it is disturbing that you have in some ways painted this as a removal of programming and a removal of fields when that's not actually happening. I know what the master plan says, and I wasn't here for that, so I'm not taking the hit on it. But
It's a public document.
yes, it
right?
is, absolutely.
So
But
so you're.
in this particular
Hold on, Aaron.
case,
Yep.
in this particular case, this council is not proposing to take away programming from children.
But
That's not what's being proposed in this particular case, so let's just leave that there.
But that's why
However-
I'm asking for this
Hold on,
process to
Aaron.
be
Aaron,
deferred.
Councillor Burke has, please.
Yes.
Hold on.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
So, I recognize what, because I like to have a reason for people to go to park on that. Same page, but somewhere in that really good presentation, tell you this, we completely work to make that happen because we have a limited amount of land. We have, as a city, as always, a limited amount of money to spend. So if you can bring a partnership in here that will develop that kind of program, we would love to work with you. Absolutely love to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you, Aaron, for your passion.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Aaron Bauer, who also has 10 minutes. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you for your passion and your enthusiasm for the sport of baseball. My name's Aaron Bauer. Thank you, Mayor and members of Council, for listening to my presentation tonight. My position is I'm against the proposed Laurelwood relocation site for the reasons shown on the screen in front of you. I've been a lifelong Waterloo resident, and we've lived in our current location in Laurelwood for just over 5 years now. Argument number one is the noise. Increased car traffic, car doors slamming, a lot of yelling and screaming, general baseball noise which comes with a ball diamond, bats, balls, cheering, etc., things that, again, would be considered normal for the game. Many would consider Laurelwood to be a quiet, family-oriented neighborhood. And I guess the question that I have is with the programming, how often would the noise be occurring? Would it be every evening, every weekend? Is it from May all the way through to September? Weekends, what does that look like? I pulled a couple quotes here from an article that was published back in March. I'm going to leave them up in the screens for people to read. So when I read comments like that, knowing what could be coming our way as a Laurelwood resident, I am, of course, a little bit concerned in moving forward. Argument number one was noise. Argument number two is street parking. This is a MapQuest satellite view of what we've already seen earlier tonight. As you can see from the picture posted, there's currently no parking. So the only option at this point would be street parking. It was suggested that we could possibly use the local school, Laurelwood Public School, as a possible location for parking. However, without people being told or forced to by signs and or by law to go to the school to park, I don't believe it would be happening. So as a result, streets like Gatestone, Berringham, Timbercroft, and Carencroft would likely absorb the increased parking. And parking brings a host of issues for me as a father of two young children. As I already mentioned, those aforementioned streets will absorb the parking. Parking across the bases of driveways is a concern. Gatestone Boulevard currently is already an F1 raceway for people cutting the corner, the Fisher-Hallman Columbia corner. So you got people zipping through there all the time. If you start packing cars on there, I worry not only for the kids getting out of the car, traveling across the street to the programmed area. I also worry about the kids that use the park adjacent to the ball diamond. I cringe every time I hear brakes and whatnot, and hoping it's not someone that's being hit. There is a bus stop right outside of our house, so it is a highly visible area for kids. So what does that look like when we've got streets now packed with cars at any time of the day? Again, no parking signs was thrown out as an option, but then people like me would lose their gas parking on weekends, overnights, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be a concern that I would present to council. Argument number 3 is just simply a lack of transparency. I first heard about this from an article published back in January of this year. I immediately met with my councillor to talk about some of the concerns I had. And later, actually, that week, I actually went door to door on a Saturday afternoon, spent about 2 hours of my time knocking on people that backed onto the green space, and not one person, other than a couple people that had read the same article I had read, had heard about this. And the question I threw your way was, how do you feel? And everybody that I got a hold of, and it was about a dozen homes, were against it. One person was neutral, but the majority of people were against it, and after hearing certain certain concerns that I'm presenting tonight. There's a correction to this. The second date should say Wednesday, April the 19th. There was a public information session held by Mr. Griffin and his staff. I did attend, and there was about 20 of us there that evening, and not one person in attendance that I gathered was in support of the proposal. Everybody that spoke that evening when I was there in attendance was firmly against it for various reasons, some of which I'm outlining tonight. And actually this past weekend there was a story that was aired on CTV News Kitchener where a local coach was interviewed along with some parents. And again, the quotes are up there for you to read at the bottom. But I quickly realized that not a lot of people know about this. And not everyone gets the chronicle, not everyone gets the record. And I live certainly within less than 120 meters, and I didn't get a notice on my door for that meeting. So fortunate for my neighbors, I found it through my neighbors, and I was able to attend. But I'm not even sure if everyone is aware of what's going on tonight. I'm not convinced everyone is. Other possible sites. The quote at the bottom mentioned, on the same article back in January, mentioned that that school board sites are a possibility. I haven't heard a whole lot about that. I realize there are restrictions on certain infrastructure at certain local schools, but the baseball structure is already in place, maybe a few upgrades, a little bit of grading. Parking will certainly not be an issue because I haven't met a school that doesn't have a parking lot. So that would be something that I would encourage council to consider in moving forward, is this option here. And finally, my final argument before I open it up to questions is just general lack of support from the folks like me that are going to be directly impacted every day. I realize this is a thing that's hitting the news lately, but in moving forward, if this thing goes through, it's us that are affected every single day from May until September. So back when I canvassed door to door back in January, again, I didn't see anybody that was hoping for this. Didn't hear anybody, again, on the date, April 19th, that should be corrected, from the information session that was held. And certainly I didn't hear anybody in support of it based on what was aired on Saturday night from CTV News. Before I finish, I just want to have council consider one final question that I have. Oh, and this is a summary of the main arguments. And subpoints under argument number 5 are just some other things, that just some odds and ends that I haven't really talked much about. One of the things that I think should be considered is the playground. There is a playground that is within close proximity, about 20 meters from the site. I've had to move my son twice from 2 foul balls that came our way just as we were playing at the park. Now that may be mitigated with a better backstop, hopefully. But I also think of my neighbors that have their backyards backing onto that. What does a foul ball look like at Sunday dinner time when you got kids playing in the backyard? And of course, future upgrades. I mean, now we're talking kid programming, but what if at some point, I'm hearing that we're at capacity for adult programming. What if at some point this site needs to be further upgraded to accommodate for additional adult programming? Just again, a concern that I would have as a resident. My final thought and the final question I would like to leave council with is, how would you feel if someone wanted to do this in your backyard? And I'm not against baseball. I'm a coach, I'm a parent, I'm all for sport. But that's something I want people to consider as they make their decision. Thank you.
Aaron? Questions from council. Councilor Burke, please.
Thank you, Aaron. You have been, from the very beginning of this, when we first met, steadfast in what you believe is a problem, and I don't disagree with your concerns. You've had an open field there for a long time, and now you're worried about programming. We'll get the answers to those questions. I can tell you that a lot of baseball programs don't last much till the end of June. in House League, certainly because everybody wants their summer off. I can tell you that much. But we'll get those answers to those questions. And I thank you for going around and asking people what they think, because that's important to find out. And I know you're not against ball because
It was very cold that day, too.
it was ridiculous. That so thank you for that. And again, I have concerns about this because it's difficult to walk into a neighborhood and say, here, have a ball diamond. However, the quotes that you used about ball diamonds were quotes from a story about adult ball diamonds, not children's programs. So that's a little bit different. And I just want to point that stuff out because I know it's very emotional and everybody, wants to get their point across. And your points are very well delivered, and I appreciate them. And I hope everybody here feels the same way. So thank you for coming out and for continuing to stay on this for the past few months. I appreciate it.
From my standpoint, thank you for highlighting the media coverage of it. I certainly wasn't aware of the CTV one, but since we're actually talking about adult ball diamonds, I'm guessing the parents that they interviewed weren't in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
I don't want to judge age. So.
Yes. So anyway, just wanted to reinforce everyone, here we're talking about the 2 adult ball diamonds in Waterloo Park, and I will have a question for staff just following up on one of the items that you highlighted. So seeing no further questions, thank you, Aaron. And for staff now, as I'm seeing more of the orientation on this, I'm reflecting on my kids playing soccer, and I'm sure we used that field for programmed soccer in the past. I remember my kids playing in there. Does anybody else recall that? Or maybe the soccer coach simply just played there? Yeah, somebody else in the audience. Anybody remember that? Commissioner Dykstra.
Yes, to answer your question, Mayor, yes, there has been soccer programming on there and use of that field for practices. It was one area that we provided at that location. We would cut it for that purpose.
When was that? How long? That's not still in use?
No, not currently. Maybe I would say 7 to 10 years ago,
yeah,
we were probably out there.
That'd be probably right. Okay, thank you. Next up, there are 5 delegates. Julianne Wiley.
So, dear Mayor and members of Council, I thank you for being here today. I appreciate all the work you're doing to try to have the best solution possible for the citizens of Waterloo. I'm here today as someone who's specialized in health. So I've studied for over 12 years, and I'm an intern for a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And look, concerned about population growth and the sports. I want to look at proximity of where the fields are being relocated, and I did a lot of statistical analysis to understand how that actually impacts the parents and therefore impacts the health of the children. So I did look up some of the fields, and looking at driving time, I noticed that in the middle of the night when I was up doing my statistical research, it was 12 to 15 minutes. That's without traffic. So some of the relocations are quite a lengthy drive. From Stats Canada, they do say that the percentage of children participating in sports is greatly reduced when the mother and the father are working full time. So if we're taking the sports center out of a key location, you are risking dropping numbers in sports, because for someone to drive an extra 20 minutes, 40 minutes for a mom when she has 4 different children and she has to cook, clean, and drive each child to their sports events, it makes it much more challenging.
Mind, I'll just interrupt. I just want to make sure I reinforce that these ball diamonds are for adult league, the ones that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, so as well as from my understanding, they're also used sometimes for
just to get clarity from staff, I think only a few tournaments a year of children are from outside, people are coming in. I'll save you time at the end, please.
Sure, no problem. So they're used as a tournament space as well, right?
Occasionally, yes.
Okay. Thank you for the correction. I'm still going to kind of continue on this trend, and then I'll add in more of the use of the fields that I've talked to from the seniors and other people as well. So, I think from outdoor field strategy, 16th, 2017, it said to work in conjunction with the provincial initiatives on the provision of healthy lifestyles through Youth for Sports and the youth. And there's just not a reflection in the new written report from June, really investigating how all these changes are going to affect the stats of all of the cities. Because even though I was telling you stats about youth, this still does also affect senior citizens, which I've heard from, and other members which just don't want to relocate and drive to the other side of the city. So that's something to be considered. And I just wanted to overall request that the approval of these fields before they are moved, that's really looked at in more detail, because it does say that they're going to look at it. They didn't, and it also says in the report in phase 2, they were going to look at different systems like social and all different phases of how this will impact the community, but they don't talk about how it will impact the community. So, since a lot of the outlines that I gave you were talking about children, I'll just talk about health in general. So right now, we know that the big epidemic in our society is autoimmune disease. We have cancer, diabetes, and pretty much every patient that I see creates a 30% reduction in inflammation in the body. It changes the way that the insulin receptors in your body receive insulin in your body, which therefore prevents and reduces diabetes. So we see these as direct correlations, as exercise and sport, to the population of Waterloo and its citizens. It also, just to talk about children, and from the National Institute of Health from 2016, it does talk about how getting children active in sports at a younger age does reduce the risk for 13 types of cancers, including breast, colon, and liver cancer in the future. It also helps them to not only stay healthy, but old, before the age of 10, and when they didn't, you only see 10% being active as adults. So what I'm saying here is that how we train our children affects their future and the future of all of Waterloo. So I know that you're saying that the downtown sports fields aren't always used for children, but I was also however, I do understand that already that the leagues are at capacity, that there's nowhere to put more sports fields, that purchasing land in the region of Waterloo to add more sports fields and more space is out of Waterloo's budget. Are for adults and the university. My question to you to just reflect upon, not to answer, would be, okay, so we're going to move men's sports fields to the other fields, are we taking away from the use of softball and t-ball and baseball from our children? Is there any confliction at all there? That's what I would want to reflect upon. Also saying that because I think I'm reflecting on baseball as being very important, since we know that the government of Canada doesn't track our annual sports intake numbers. However, the latest report that I found from Solutions Research Group, which interviewed more than 2,000 Canadian families, said that softball was one of the least expensive sports to participate in due to minimal equipment requirements. So for anyone that's having financial struggles, which we know that with our rising prices in our food, our rising prices in our gas, our real estate inflation has been astronomical for our generation. In fact, you call me the renters generation because of that. We need something that we can afford to put kids in. Hockey is really expensive. It's $1,500 to join. Softball and baseball is cheaper. And even if these children want to use the baseball fields when they're older, they have that skill developed and will continue exercising, which will still continue to benefit the health of the overall Waterloo population. So there's a lot more I could go into. I could probably talk about it. Is that sports is about investing in other children that aren't your own. So we're not just trying to improve the lifestyles for our own families, but we want to set up solutions for the entire community of Waterloo. And we also want to set up solutions for all the university students, which are still considered adolescents when they're 18 and they are in those programs, and it's still affecting their brain development, and it's still affecting their health, and it's still affecting their habits. So what happens when we take their fields away from them? Will they really relocate 15, 10, 12 minutes away? I don't know many university students that have cars. I don't know many university students that do. I'm resources, and I think the convenience of even having the fields there for them is what keeps a lot of them active. So all I'm asking for, I know I just threw a lot at you, a lot of different points, a lot of different generations to think about, but really what I'm asking you is to really take the statistical analysis and all the research, really take some time and sit with it, and just think about, okay, how is this going to affect all the generations? What's it going to look like in 50 to 100 years if we're changing our central focus of our city from sports to festivals? There's nothing wrong with festivals. Festivals are great. Festivals are fun. But I know in the west of Toronto, every weekend there's a different city with a festival. This last weekend, it was Sound of Music for the last week. You can go to any place and we can have festivals. And it does. I know Oktoberfest is great. It brings people into the city temporarily.
Be a fair warning, there's 30 seconds left.
Perfect. This is my ending point. When I looked at the statistics for Waterloo and why Waterloo was ranked number 10 for being the best city in Canada, one of the 4 points was that its sports programs and the accessibility to all the fields were good. So you're also looking at changing the statistical outcome that immigrants are looking at to come to these cities as well by changing your main location in sports fields. It's just food for thought.
Thank you, Julianne. Questions for the delegate from staff? Or from seeing none, thank you very much. Joey Shaw has 5 minutes.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor Jaworski. Thank you for letting me kind of present in front of you today. I'm not extremely well prepared, but I am a fourth-year BBA student at Wilfrid Laurier University, and I am actually one of the 10 conveners that helps run Major League Summer Baseball, MLSB for short, which is a rather large university league, predominantly for third and fourth year Laurier BBA Waterloo students that are attending school over the summer. The difficult thing, I think, with students is getting them to come out to things like this, keeping them, even making them aware of events and meetings and things like this in the first place. But the concerns I want to express today are mostly around, obviously, the removal of Diamonds 1 and 2 at Waterloo Park. Being a fourth-year student and actually graduating in August, I'll be moving to Toronto, and I don't have, to be completely honest, a vested interest in these diamonds. Surprised to hear about the scope and the extent of the league that we run. We have 878 university students that play, 943 registrants, so the 65 additional, the discrepancy there are for students that play on two different teams. So students playing on one team play 2 games a week. Games take place from 11:45, 12:45, every single day. 2 hours of each week, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. That league is really about together from Waterloo, from Laurier, getting students out in the sun. I know I was a few shades lighter just in the past month, but I've been out there all the time. In addition, probably once or twice a month, we'll host all-day tournaments on Friday at Waterloo Park. And I understand that the city is not trying to, take away the use of baseball playing facilities into the future. I understand that there is, there are proposals and there are plans to move baseball and to even increase, the number of available fields and whatnot. But what is really fundamentally important about the Waterloo Park facility is the proximity and the centrality of it to the Laurier Waterloo community. I know for a fact, I lived last summer at Hazelton University, and I had just, a 10 to 12 minute walk to 1 and 2, and maybe an 8 to 10 minute walk to 3 and 4. This year I live up at Columbia and Hazel, so the walk is almost doubled. Having said that, I still, come out each and every day, and I've put a lot of time and a lot of effort into the league and making sure it runs smoothly, because for a lot of third and fourth year Laurier students, it's such a huge part of their summer here in Waterloo. And the Diamonds are really critical for us in order to maintain this league. This and take over and run the league throughout the off season, and then, mostly throughout next summer. So like I said, I'll be gone and I'll be out of the way, but I don't see a viable path forward, I suppose, for the league, given the removal of Diamonds 1 and 2 at Waterloo Park. By the way, Mayor or council members, if you want to give me a 30-second heads up or whatever, because I'm going on here, but
You got 90 more seconds.
Oh, perfect. Obviously, the major concern that Julianne raised is that students really don't have cars. I would estimate on the average team we have about 23 players. I would estimate that 4 or 5 might have access to a car. Just people to come out to see the same and socializing with other students, the time out in the sun, being active. But I think there's also a lot to be said about physical health and mental health and the effects that and the benefits that playing regularly and being involved in something like this has. So council and staff members, I would love for you to ask me any other questions, whether it's the more on the financial side, more on the player registration and participant side, even about, kind of how we operate the games and how we schedule the games and whatever, because I think the students, like I said, are probably some of the toughest people to engage, but they're probably just stakeholders. Softball nights to Rim Park, while it might be an inconvenience and while there might be, additional transportation there, it wouldn't affect them as much as us having to coordinate between, 2 or 3 different diamonds scattered around. Because like I said, we do use all 4 basically every day, and it would be, I think, very difficult to find another facility in Waterloo where we would be able to access all 4 diamonds and have them in such close proximity to the university. So yeah, I would love to answer kind of any questions, and I would love to just follow up with you guys and kind of stay engaged, not only for myself and for us this summer, but for, my little sister that's going to be starting her program. Gems of the league. It's something that we've done since next. So, yeah, I would love to hear from you guys.
Well, Joey, if this is how you speak unprepared, you're going to do well in life and well in business. But once you find out that you don't like living in Toronto and need to come back, you can come on back to Waterloo anytime.
That's kind of the master plan, to be perfectly honest. I've fallen in love with the community here, so.
Questions for the delegate? If not, I have one. With respect to students, all students have mandatory bus passes, and the iExpress bus that runs past both the universities ends up at Rim Park. So how might that feed into the solution, a 12-minute bus ride versus a 12-minute walk? I'm just thinking that through. If you have any input on that, I think staff would be pleased to hear. In my mind, you already have to pay for the bus pass anyway, so the pass is free, and we do have lots of diamonds that are available during the day, I would think, during weekdays and stuff like that. Just have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, Rim Park is probably the only other facility in Waterloo that would have the number of diamonds that we would need each day. So for tournaments, we will use occasionally, if 1 through 4 at Waterloo Park isn't enough, we'll use Hillside, in which case there's buses that go down Columbia as well as people with cars and whatnot. So it's a little bit difficult to coordinate between 2 diamonds, as we've found, or 2 different parks rather. That's what makes Waterloo Park so great. Now Rim Park is able to offer that, but obviously that a 12-minute walk can be you can take kind of at whim, whether you're just up or whether you're at home or whether you ran to grab a bite to eat with a friend. The 12-minute walk is a 12-minute walk whenever you want to make it, and unless I take the number 9 bus down and 15 minutes early, I'm able to play some catch and warm up and make sure all the diamonds are good to go, which is kind of part of my responsibilities as a convener. But, I would invite you guys to kind of work with us, because in order to make a bus or a public transportation kind of viable, we would really need to closely kind of coordinate schedules with the schedules on our end. So, yeah, obviously, the 12-minute bus ride compared to a 12-minute walk is comparable in that sense, and we do all have the passes. But I think it would be pretty safe to assume that playing at Rim Park 4 days a week, as opposed to Waterloo Park, located smack dab in the middle of 2 universities, would definitely cause a drop-off to some extent in the participation and the number of people that are willing to play each day and to even register for the league in the first place.
Okay. Thank you, Joey. Thank you for your input. And seeing no further questions, thank you. We have only Rebecca Pratt. And you as well have Rebecca.
Okay.
Thank you for coming out.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor, council members, guests, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. So I also am a BBA student at Laurier. I'm in my 3rd year, and so this is my first summer ever playing MLSB. It's been great. I'm in the co-op program, and one thing that I learned as a student, other than great job experience, was that when you're spending a summer at Laurier, you have to be part of MLSB. There's no question about it. I have people who graduated from Laurier 10 years ago saying, I was on MLSB, and they're continuing that. So the impact of taking away these fields isn't just hitting us current students, it's hitting future students, and it's hitting past students. Because when they talk to us and we say, oh, not as many people come out anymore because they relocated and field get from baseball. And I think most, especially with transportation, I personally can't afford a car. Tuition's a lot. Getting out to Rim Park would be difficult. And while you did say buses are an option, seeing as we do have passes, it's just not as fun. I mean, I walk to my games with my captain every day. We pick up our friends on the way. We're listening to music. We're talking. And you can't really do that on a bus. Especially at the timing, too. Like, people are coming. They're going for lunch. And we don't want to disturb other members of the Waterloo community while we're on a bus. We're rowdy. We're teenagers. We're going to be excited, especially on the way home. I mean, if we won a game, we're excited. We're having fun. And I don't want to be a burden on the other members of Waterloo who are just trying to get home from work or go to work. Basically, such a big impact at Laurier. I was walking through campus today. You see everyone. This one guy was talking. And I'm not. Must be in the community, and by taking away these fields, so can just turn out the same number of people coming up every single summer to play. And the social aspect of it is so important. I talk to people who I normally would not see on a regular basis. I play with the kids in my corps, so we have all the same classes together, but that doesn't mean we talk. We're in class, lectures, learning, but we're not talking, we're not having fun, we're not being active together, and this gives us the opportunity to do that. And additionally, when we don't have enough people to play on our team, like Joey mentioned, my team's we had 6 people come this morning, and then we had to recruit people from other teams. So I'm not talking about meeting people who are in my corps. I'm meeting 4th year students. I'm meeting to join teams just because they know how much SB be really inconvenient for us having to relocate to Rim Park. And I know that, you know, if need be, it has to happen, but from a student's perspective, it's not what I want, and I'm not trying to step on any toes. I only found out I was coming here this morning, but I'm asking you not only on behalf of myself, but my team and the 900 other students who play every single day to maybe reconsider, give it a little time, look at the facts a little bit longer. If you have any questions, I mean, I don't know what I can answer. I've only been in the league for a month, but
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Questions for Rebecca? Seeing none, thank you for your enthusiasm, thank you for speaking out, and thank you for bringing the information to us. Just on the buses, I do know, I think at the region, to make the I-Express buses more frequent, so frequent, and rowdiness is okay, a little bit of it. And that's all the registered delegations we have for tonight for that one. And now it's now open to council for seeing any councillors want to take this roll.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the motion.
Seconded by Councillor V.
And just a quick comment. I think I understand and I think it's valuable to the information that's come forward today. I think there's definitely room to continue to work together and collaborate. And I think our staff are more than willing to do that. This is the continuation of a plan, and I want to complement our staff. This is a good plan. We're doing communities to look for everybody happy, but I definitely think that we're trying to come to some good conclusions for everyone. So I appreciate that. I think one of the most important things that was said today is that in 3 years we'll have more parks than we do today, baseball diamonds, which I think is important, or working towards that, not to put you on the spot. And I think we've had some important. I will be supporting this.
Yeah. Councillor Veith, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. My house backs onto 2 schools that have baseball or some kind of ball almost every night during the summer. The clanking of the bats and the cheering, and I love it. So anyway, my big concern in this whole thing is the parking, because I know even on Conservation Drive where there's soccer fields there, and there people are, for me, I mean, having a ball diamond in any school or city property is a good thing, and I refer to Councillor Freeman's comments about keeping our community safe and healthy and active. It's a issue in this project. So, thank you.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, through Mayor Jaworski. So as I read these recommendations are related to getting more information in many respects. And I to dismantle programming. We are looking to maintain all the programming that we're doing and to do more. That's what we're trying to do here. And we're not talking about using the fields in Laurelwood and Eastbridge for adult programming. They are not a replacement for the fields that we're talking about Waterloo Park. And we are talking about other holdings that we have that would be more appropriate for adult programming. And my comments related to Eastbridge were in support of bringing those fields online for young people. And the loitering meant not active or passive recreation, but rather that there are some teens that are doing some very bad things in that space because it's not programmed. So if we were to program it, might solve, and it would still allow for passive recreation of that space as well. So I think there's just some. The neighborhood is worried. They're worried about on-street parking. They're worried about older children playing on those diamonds that could create a hazard for people whose backyards face onto that space. They want clarity around things like lighting. They don't want lighting on that space at night. And they need answers on how it is that we as a city, if we say people are going to park at Lester B. Pearson, or what are the tools? What are the tools that we have to make that happen? Because I don't know what tools we have, and I want that information. I want all of it before I make any decisions. But what I understand I'm voting on tonight is not only continuing all the programming that we have for baseball, but improving it. And that's what I understand I'm doing tonight. And if I'm wrong, I would like to know right now.
Sure, go ahead, Jim. Is she wrong?
Absolutely not. Everything you said is very accurate. The intent of this is to move towards phase 2 in order to get more information and to work with our groups to facilitate the growing need of all of our outdoor sports activities, including baseball, soccer, softball, and to work with the neighbors and the neighborhoods to say, how can we make this happen, or can we make it happen? At this stage of the game, we're not sure parking is an issue. The other gentleman expressed some other issues that we have been made aware of. And so in some cases, we need to shake this bag and see what's going to work for us. But we know from the conversations that we've heard from the groups is that there's growth. We also want to promote activities for the benefit and the welfare of our community members, all members, and to work
This is a very similar process that we went through for soccer, because we had to take offline two very, very important soccer fields at Bechtel Park to allow for the expansion of the cemetery. And that did not happen until we had those premier fields constructed at Rim Park, and minor soccer entered into an agreement at St. David's School as well. So
we're working with schools. We're also working with our both universities to facilitate space that they may have to accommodate some of the needs that we also have as a community from the university perspective as well as from our perspective. So there's opportunities out there that we're investigating to see how can we make this happen.
Excellent. Thank you. And Councillor Burke.
It's really unfortunate that this has been misconstrued as, destroying programming and reducing programming and putting adults to play baseball in people's backyards. It's really unfortunate. Now, maybe we all have a role to play in communications on that. Maybe the outside has a role to play. But many people I know were upset by this idea that, two diamonds will be demolished and adults will be playing slow pitch in Laurelwood. That's very unfortunate. And I have my concerns, like I say. When I listen to the MLSB kids, I hate to call you kids, but you are. By the way, do you take senior players? Because that would be fun. You all talk about making the neighborhood a better place. Well, Waterloo Park and those diamonds makes that neighborhood a better place for you. And now we talk about putting a better diamond out in Laurelwood, which maybe the programming can be for the kids in Laurelwood. Wouldn't it be cool to walk to the ball game instead of drive to the ball game, where we eliminate the problem with parking? So we have all these little different things that we have to discuss, but we can't get there unless we have these discussions and move this forward. And so I just want people to understand that if we approve this tonight, it doesn't mean that we're going to be coming to play baseball in your backyard tomorrow. That is not what's happening. We're not taking away programming for kids. That's not happening right now. We are trying, as Mr. Bowman has said, to create every possible part of programming for everybody. And as you heard earlier, we need more fields. So we absolutely know that baseball and softball and all those things are growing. And we all want our kids out there playing that. My youngest kid is 32 and still pitches in a fastball league in BC. She calls me and complains on Sunday their arm's going to fall off, but she still pitches in a fastball league every week. So we all want that stuff for kids, but we need to get the information first. And I know 100 to see how we can serve every possible constituency. And for that reason, I'll vote in favor of it tonight to move it forward so we can get that information so we can do the right things.
Seeing further, well done, Councillor Burke. You've pretty much taken everything off my list, the dispelling myths and rumors and suppositions. We cleared that up tonight. The only thing else I had on my list was the opportunity of the Waterloo Park Master Plan. We're really focused on the festival area and that, but there's also going to be a beautiful, what's that walkway called? Ring around there. It's a growing everywhere else. There's lots of good things in the Waterloo Park Master Plan that are inclusive in and about that area. But at this point in time, I think one of the first delegates said that we need to do a strategy, and that's what we're doing here today, is doing a strategy, doing a full public consultation, tonight. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that carries. Well done. And thank you all for your input, and there's always room for more input from citizens. So there's certainly a website and more ways to get in. Thank you. I'll move to item number 2. And it's an informal public meeting. So this informal meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1710, 2050 University Avenue East, Hospice of Waterloo Region. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by Council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands and anyone who signs the registry will receive notice of the formal public meeting. Anyone who wants further notice of this application, including the formal public meeting and passage of any bylaw, should sign the register on the back of the council chambers there. Now, a brief overview of the application.
Good evening.
Welcome, Natalie.
Good evening, Mayor Jaworski, members of council. This is an informal public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z1710 for the property located at 2050 University Ave East. So this property is located southeast of University to a gravel lane and leads to the property. We have a low-density residential subdivision to the south, and the Parkwood Mennonite homes out along University Ave East as well. We also have some trails that run just north of the property and south of the property to University Ave as well. So in 2012, Council approved a new official plan which designated this property as business employment, as a minor corridor, and as medium density employment with a maximum building height of 27 meters, or about 9 stories. The current zoning bylaw zones the property to agriculture, or an A zone, and there's also a site-specific bylaw mainly related to the lot area and lot frontage because it doesn't front onto a public highway. This agriculture zone has been in place for quite a number of years now and doesn't necessarily align with our new official plan that was recently approved. In the second draft zoning bylaw, staff have proposed rezoning the property to a future determination zone, or FD zone. So this is the second draft bylaw that came out in April of this year for to locate this area within Area F of the parking, or the draft parking overlay, which would propose a 10% parking rate reduction within this area because it is within that minor corridor, or essentially they would have to provide 90% of the required parking spaces. This application is being advanced in order to permit the zone, or permit a building for the Hospice of Waterloo Region. So this is a charitable organization that provides services for the support of people affected for more information on this organization. In order to permit this proposed development, the applicant has proposed to rezone the lands from the current agriculture zone to a new business employment zone. So it would be a new zone added to zoning bylaw 1418 in order to better align with our official plan. So this new business employment zone would permit a variety of uses, including a hospice, office, community use, medical clinic, and government uses. So those are the types of uses that we're evaluating as part of this application. They're also proposing a minimum parking space requirement of 3 parking spaces per 100 square meters of building floor area. And the zoning There were a number of plans and studies that were submitted as part of the application, including a planning justification report, noise feasibility study, transportation assessment, particularly for Country Squire Lane, a conceptual access lane design for the next few weeks, as well as any comments that we receive from the public. And once we've reviewed all of those items, we'll be preparing a report to council with some recommendations at a later date. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council had.
Thank you, Natalie. Does any councillor have any questions for staff? Please remember this is an informal public meeting and only questions of clarification may be asked. Council members should not express
properties on Atlantic, and so I'm looking in the planning justification. I mean, maybe it's just that GSP is going to cover this. If you are, then that's great, Sarah. But I'm trying to get a sense. What's the difference in terms of the setbacks from what people have become accustomed to right now before the farm was dismantled and the current plan?
So through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Freeman. So this is the site plan on the screen right now. To the south is the existing creek that runs between the proposed or the current site and the subdivision to the south. The setback that was proposed within the draft business employment zone was 3 meters from that property line. However, because of this waterway, the Grand River Conservation Authority is also requiring a 15-meter buffer from the top of that bank, which we are evaluating with the GRCA, or the Grand River Conservation Authority, as part of this application. And I'm sure Sarah can speak to the proposed setback in a bit more detail, but what's shown on the site plan would be complying with that 15-meter buffer from that creek, from the top of the bank of the creek. Through you, Mayor Jaworski, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Further questions of staff at this point? Seeing none. I'll ask any registered delegations to come forward. And I have two. First off, Judy, Executive Director, and sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you.
And Bill has told me I should do this on my own. But Mayor Jaworski and council members, thank you very much. I am here with part of our team, Bill Green and Sarah Code from GSP, my board president, Gail Sadler, and our architect, Laird Robertson, to share with you our future plans and hopefully get your encouragement and support for our project. But we thought we should start first with just a very brief summary of Hospice of Waterloo Region, who we are, what we learned, community hospice work, and that is history. Is care that is aimed at relief of improving the quality of life for persons who have or are dying from an advanced illness or who are bereaved. So in the principles of hospice palliative care, we recognize dying as a normal part of living. Our focus is always on care, not cure, and life, not death. So we value very much dignity and quality of life for people to the very end. We use whole care, team approach to providing supports and services to people, and hospice palliative care neither hastens nor prolongs a natural death. Community outreach hospice services, which is what Hospice of Waterloo Region is currently, we have no residential beds. So we do not currently have a space where people come to our facility and die. We provide psychosocial, emotional, and practical supports to individuals who have a life-limiting illness and to their families, often for 6 to 12 months at a time. So they're in the community, they're in their homes, and we are providing service to them, both at the site we are currently and at their, in their own homes, so that they can stay at home as long as possible. We also provide service into long-term care. We provide services into the residential hospices, which are in our community currently, and into hospitals. Our current services typically involve a lot of volunteer supports. We have over 250 volunteers who are out working with individuals who are ill. We do volunteer matches with them. We run a day program. We have a hair salon. We provide transportation services. We have Reiki and massage and yoga. We also support family members with counseling services and support for children's programming to help children understand death and dying. We run respite for caregivers, and we do a lot of education to palliative professionals, nurses and doctors, to help professionals understand the detail and the specifics of caring for people who are dying. Our current numbers in the last year, we've served over 1,160 individuals. We have 25 staff currently, as I said, 250 volunteers. We delivered over 14,000 hours of volunteer service. We provided counseling to over 274. We delivered education to over 3,200 participants, and we provided community and healthcare information and workshops to another 3,400 people in the community, particularly on the topic of advanced care planning. And this is why we do this work. This was a slide presented by Dr. Jeff Myers in 2012, and this is the actual and projected deaths in Ontario out to 2030. And as you can see, we are an aging population, and the boomers are coming along, and they will be impacting the number of people who die in our community. And we know that the need for our services is going to be growing. And therefore, our plan and our future is for this new center in North Waterloo, and it will allow us to provide additional residential hospice beds into our community. It will give us space for expanding our community programming and our counseling. It will give us better space for our education programs, and it will be able to allow us to enhance our space for the palliative physicians who work out of our office so that they have more room and are able to see more people. So that's our future. That's where we're hoping to come to Waterloo. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Judy. Questions of Judy at this point? Seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And next up, I will welcome Sarah Code from GSP to speak. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Sarah Code, and I am a planner with GSP Group. I am pleased to be here on behalf of Hospice Waterloo Region tonight to present the zone change application for 2050 University Ave East. So my presentation will just briefly give you an overview of the context of the site, the land use framework, and the proposed zone change application, and present to you the development concept for the site. So as you've already heard, the site is surrounded by sports fields to the north and west. There is an existing stormwater management pond to the east and an open space block to the south, as well as low-rise residential. The official plan designates the site business employment. This designation permits offices as well as ancillary uses, including community uses and medical clinics. General objectives in the official plan encourage development and neighborhoods that accommodate residents at all stages of life and encourages communities to develop with a mix of uses. The OP permits a maximum height of 27 meters on the site. So as you've heard, the site is zoned agriculture, and we are proposing a new business employment zone. And this new zone will permit uses for hospice, community uses, medical clinic, and government uses. This is the development concept as it stands today. The building is approximately 2,100 meters squared, and it will be comprised of offices, community and program use space, a medical clinic, and residential palliative care space. The residential portion is proposed at the rear of the building and will contain 10 residential beds. Final building height has not been determined, but it is expected that it will be 1 story in height, some portions being 2 stories for rooftop mechanical. 75 parking spaces are proposed, which is above the 3 parking spaces per 100 meters squared that is proposed in the business employment zone. The existing right-of-way that accesses the site is currently gravel, however, will likely be upgraded through the site plan approval process to asphalt. 3 studies were submitted in support of the application along with the planning justification report. The functional servicing report concludes that sanitary and water services can be extended from the existing Atlantic Boulevard through the park block to the site, and stormwater will be directed to the existing stormwater management facility to the east of the site. The noise feasibility study concluded that there will be no traffic noise impacts and no stationary noise impacts as a result of rooftop mechanical equipment on the existing low-rise residential to the south. A traffic assessment was completed, however, a full traffic impact study was not required, and the traffic volumes generated by the proposed development will generate approximately 30 new trips in both the weekday morning and afternoon peak hours for the administrative clinic and program use component. The traffic generated by the proposed use will be significantly less than the surrounding sports fields. So in conclusion, it is our opinion that the proposed zone change application is consistent with the PPS for development of land within the built-up area and will provide for an important community use in the city of Waterloo. The proposed application conforms with the growth plan, regional and city official plans as it relates to building complete communities and meeting the needs of all residents at all stages of life. The proposed application will facilitate development of the site that is compatible with the adjacent low-rise residential and provides an ideal transition to future employment uses to the north and west. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions? Councillor Veith first.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. Can you just clarify, I think you said 90 parking spots?
75.
Oh, 70. It seems like a lot for a facility like this.
Yes, the zoning bylaw at 3 per 100 would require 66, so we are just capacity issues that they've seen there. This is something that Hospice Waterloo Region is looking for, is more parking spaces, so that is why the higher number.
So is this facility going to be about the same size as the Lawrence one?
No, it will be significantly larger.
Larger, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing Councillor Freeman with her hand up, I'll turn over to her.
I think that some of my questions maybe relate to site plan, but I know that the neighbors are just, the neighbors that immediately back onto it from Atlantic have come to admire, shall we say, the green space that they back onto. And so some of the heavier uses like snow storage and to. Can we give some consideration to that? And I don't know whether we want to make it a part of the approvals process or whether it just is some direction of council to site plan, but I think that like trying to think about what those sight lines look like from the backs of Atlantic and what these setbacks are and how that sense of open space is created there would be really helpful to maintain, because I suspect too, like I know there's going to be like a walking path and gardens and all kinds of open spaces all in the back here, and so I think that helping people to visualize that in a formal meeting would be really helpful too, because I think when you see a site plan, it just looks so straightforward. So, as opposed to what it would look and feel like if you were backing onto it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Mayor. Landscaping will be a significant and important part of this site plan. It's important to hospice and to the design of the site. To your earlier question, there is a 20-meter setback from the existing property lines of the houses along Atlantic Boulevard to the subject properties property line, and then we are proposing almost another 15-meter setback to the building. So really from property line to new building, there will be approximately 35 meters. So that is a significant distance. And within that 14 meters from property line to building, we will be looking at landscaping that and providing screening.
Sometimes when people think of lot distances, they think in feet. And I know that we work always in metric, but like 35 meters is over 100 feet, right? So I think I think it just might be helpful to give that sense of depth for some folks.
And just to add to that, we will be setting up a meeting with neighboring residents to go over the site plan and the development concept further.
Thanks, Sarah. Is there anyone else here present tonight who will speak to this application but did not register? Yes, sir. Please come on up. You'll have 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Richard Eddy. I did not come prepared, but I live on Atlantic Boulevard. I do not back directly onto the subject property. And I'm just simply making some notes as the presentations were being made. I've got a bit of a history in commercial real estate, so I have some questions just to propose that the council considers when they eventually review this application. So the first point I actually wanted to make is initially it was mentioned that there would be a 3-meter setback from Atlantic Boulevard properties. Is if there's only going to be 30 in and outs for vehicles in the day, what the need is for 75 parking spaces, and then just having some consideration to how much land space that's actually going to occupy to have that many parking spaces. Another thought was if there's 75 spots and the ratio is 3 spots for 100 square meters, that would tell me that there's some consideration that this building is going to be about 2,500 square meters in size, or at least that's what they would be accounting for. So if we could get some information on what the actual footprint of the building is, maybe there is another zoning, I guess, bylaw that would be more appropriate for this type of building. Another question I have is this hospice development a government use? Is this a government organization or is this a private organization? I think that should maybe be a little bit more clear. When you put the name Waterloo Hospice, it sounds very official. I don't personally know if that is a government organization or a private organization. Couple other questions to consider. What's the vertical impact, the shadows of the property from is there a lack of nearby services? Like there's not a whole lot of commercial services in that area right now. So what are the impacts kind of commercially by bringing in this facility? Also, question for the developers would be, presumably this will increase the use and impact on the available services in the area, so the walking paths, mill and woods. So is there any consideration from the developer to increase the available services in that area? Thank you. That's all I had to ask.
Thank you. What was your name again?
Richard Eddy.
Richard. Thank you very much, Richard. I think you're going to find staff or even the group will be able to fill you in even just outside of council chambers, but it is certainly not but all that can be clarified out there, but those are all good questions that we'll make sure to take note of. So we have those on our website should those questions come up again. So thank you very much, Richard. Seeing no further enthusiasm in the crowd, if there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. Thank you all very much for coming out. And we move on to our second item in the informal public meetings. This is an informal public meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1712, 115 and 117 Herb Street East, Herb East Developments, Inc. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration developing a staff position on this application, and staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. All property subject lands, anyone who signs the registry, which is right at the back, will get further notice of the formal public meeting. I will now provide a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Laura.
Members here tonight. Sorry, there's some technical difficulties just plaguing me right this very moment. Thank you. I'll just be giving a brief overview of zoning bylaw amendment Z1712 for 115 and 117 Herb Street East. So this is a map of the subject property. The three parcels you see here have a total area of 0.28 hectares, and they have all been consolidated under the same ownership, being Herb East Developments, Inc. This is a panoramic view of the property, looking just here. These are the two houses that exist on the property. They face Herb Street and looking all the way to the very back of the property you see here. This is a street view of the subject lands. I've identified them here with the red bar, and you can see the condition of the lands to either side of that subject property. This map gives you some of the context surrounding the property. This is Water Place. It's a residential condominium development just to the west of the lands. This is a 23-story building and a 16-story building. To the south of the property, so these lands that you see here, these are all part of St. John's Lutheran Church. And directly east of the lands are predominantly single detached dwellings, as are these properties here to the north, with the exception of the Heartland Mutual office building. So the applicant is proposing to remove the existing dwellings and construct a new apartment building. It would contain a total of 94 one- and two-bedroom units and 112 parking spaces. The front portion of the building would be 12 stories, and it would step down in height to 6 stories towards the back of the property. There would be 3 levels of parking, 1 at grade, 2 underground. The lands are within the Laurel Clare Creek Special Policy Area. The majority of the property, with the exception of the front, are all within that area. More specifically within the flood fringe of the Laurel Creek floodplain. Any development within those lands need to be designed to meet very specific regulations. The front portion of the property, however, is outside of the floodplain, and this is primarily how they're able to provide safe access to the site. So this is an artist's rendering of the proposed development. You can see facing Herb Street, as I said, the building is 12 stories in height, stepping down for the back portion of the building to 6 stories. So the site is what we call split designated and split zoned. The front portion of the site, which is shown here in blue, is designated mixed-use, medium, high-density residential in the city's official plan. So it contemplates up to a maximum of 600 bedrooms per hectare, 40 meters in height, and it's currently zoned GR1. So you can tell these two things aren't quite aligned at the moment. The back portion of the property, the orange hatched area, is designated mixed-use, medium-density residential in the official plan, and it contemplates up to 450 bedrooms per hectare with 20 meters in height, and it's currently zoned MR4. So as part of this zoning bylaw amendment application, the applicant is requesting to change those zoning categories. So they want to rezone the front portion from GR1 to MR, or multiple residence 12, and the back portion from MR4 to multiple residence 6. They're also requesting a number of site-specific changes to the performance regulations that are within those new zoning categories. So they include an increase in height. On the MR12 lands, that would be from 36 meters to 40 meters, which, as I said, is the maximum contemplated in the official plan, and increasing the height on the MR6 lands from 18 meters to 20 meters. They also are looking at introducing a new measure of density for the entire site, to try and deal with this challenge of having it split designated, split zoned. So rather than having the 200 units per hectare and 150 units per hectare at the front and the back, they're looking at introducing either 335 units per hectare across the entire site, or 500 bedrooms per hectare, which is the new measure in our official plan of density. So this would also allow them to transfer a small amount of density from the medium-high to the medium-density lands. They also wish to reduce the residential parking rate from 1.25 spaces per unit to 1.19 spaces per unit. And it results in about 6 fewer spaces than the requirement in the zones that they're requesting. They also wish to reduce the surface parking requirement from 10% to 5%. They wish to reduce the ground floor habitable space from 25% to 24%. They're requesting a reduction to the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 6.1 meters in this location here. I have to just point out the remainder of the building, because the wall of the building is in this location, the rear property line is angled in this location, so it's really at this pinch point they need relief from the bylaw. Also, a reduction to the side yard setback on the west side of the building. I've just shown you here in this location where they need some relief from 3 meters to 2.4 meters. They're also requesting a reduction in the average width requirement for a landscape buffer adjacent to a low-rise residential area of 3 meters. So the current requirement, 3 meters, going down to an average of 2.9 meters. So that would be along the east side of the site in this location. They're also asking for reductions to the low-rise residential area setback from 119 Herb Street East, this being the 12-story portion of the building. They would be required under the new zone 20 meters. They are requesting 9.1 meters. And from 51 Moore Street, this is the 6-story portion of the building, they would be required 10-meter setback, and they're requesting 8.5. in this location. So the applicant has submitted a number of technical documents and plans for staff and agencies, including the Grand River Conservation Authority and the region, to review. They're all linked on the city's website for anyone to take a look at, review, and provide feedback to staff. There may be other studies or supporting material the applicant is required to submit prior to staff providing a recommendation to council. So next, staff and agencies will review the application in detail, including feedback from the public. We'll follow up with the applicant with any concerns or comments to be addressed, and the applicant at this point can now initiate the site plan process. Staff will ultimately prepare a staff report with recommendations to council, and council will make a decision later on the application at a future formal public meeting. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Does any councillor have any questions for staff? Please remember this is an informal public meeting. Only questions of clarification may be asked. Council members should not express opinions at this point. And if nobody has anything going on, could you go back to the map, please, that showed the split zoning, or it's probably about your slide number 4 or something like that. Yeah, so these seem like very vintage pieces of land with very, very long backyards, extremely exceptionally long backyards. Were these, so I've taken it as a given that these two pieces of property are independent, very lengthy properties, yet here it looks like two square zonings. How does that happen? Why wouldn't each one all the way through be zoned the same?
I have to say I'm not entirely sure. That was something that was developed through the official plan review, the designations on the lands. The back, as I understand, this portion of the property here was originally part of the church church parcel. It was severed and conveyed as a lot addition back in 2013. So still, so it does make sense that that this portion in its entirety has its own clear designation. I'm not entirely sure the history of why the front two parcels, so that are 115 and 117, are actually split designated and split zoned. I'm not sure if it'd be. Well,
that's fair enough. I was just more asking out of interest how this came to be, but you've essentially answered the question. Questions from any councillors? Seeing none, thank you very much. I will now ask my delegations to come forward. First up, Heather Holbrook, GSP Group. Oh, am I on the right one?
Councillors, and thank you staff for your thorough presentation. That will allow me to skim through mine and be quite succinct as best I can. It's my pleasure to be here to present this application this evening on behalf of our client, Herb East Developments Inc., who owns the subject properties. I'm joined this evening by the owner of the property as well as the project architect, ABA Architects, who are involved in developing the development concept. So my presentation, I will try to keep it brief. We'll do a quick context of the site and its surroundings. I'll speak to the development concept in some detail, describe the zone change application, and just hit the highlights of the supporting studies that were submitted with the zoning bylaw amendment request. As Laura identified, it's a consolidation of two lots of approximately 0.27 hectares in area. There are two houses on the site located close to the street, and there's a change across the site with a high point at the street edge. Stepping back a little, you can see towers to the immediate west of the site and the houses to the immediate east of the site. And there is an office building across the street and some more low-rise housing across the street along Moore Avenue. To the rear of the site, towards the bottom of the page, the property abuts the church lands. From a transportation context, this site is well served by existing and planned transit, as well as cycling routes. It is a walkable site insofar as it's immediately adjacent to Uptown Waterloo and a short walk right into the core, including to the planned LRT stops. It's also a short walking distance to the nearby commercial plaza at Bridgeport and Weber. As Laura identified, the site is split designated as shown on this map, and it's immediately adjacent the designated urban growth center of Uptown Waterloo. It's also forming part, you can see in this map, of a planned minor corridor, which is an intensification corridor, a place where for area. So everything generally in orange along that edge for some intensification. So to speak to the development concept, it does propose to reflect the split designation of the site in the official plan. So directing the taller portion of the development towards Herb Street and stepping down to 6 stories towards the rear of the site. The front door of the development is driveway accesses would consolidate towards the edge of the site where it abuts the residential housing, and that gives it a little bit more separation. The parking is structured, integrated as part of the podium at the back, as well as below grade. And that design also allows for being that it's within the regulated floodplain area. As you can see in this design, it is a preliminary schematic at this time, but there are planned balconies along the east and west edges of this building. And as staff noted, there would be a rooftop terrace for the residents of this development on top of the shorter portion of the building. So this is a summary of all the requests as part of the zone change application, and I thank Laura for going through them, and I won't go through them again in the same amount of detail. Generally speaking, the intent is to implement the best zones that fit under the current bylaw to suit the designations of the new official plan. That is the 12-story height and the 6-story height that you find in the MR6 and the MR12. However, they don't quite fit the concept. And so there are a number of tailored requests that are this. Just expand on it briefly. The reduced side yard setback on the south side, which is the smaller of the setback, is residential development at Water Park Place Towers. And that is deliberate to move the mass of the building away from the houses to the extent possible while still maintaining an adequate buffer on that side. However, some reduction to the setbacks is still needed on the north side because they are zoned for low-rise residential at this time. If we were to wait until such time as the new zoning catches up to the official plan, we could expect that the zoning on those adjacent sites would also change to allow medium density to high density, medium-high density residential development, and such large setbacks would not necessarily be required. I think what's also important to note is that we are honoring the line that's in the official plan as far as what should be medium-high and what should be medium density. So that's the dotted line on that plan and where the extent of the MR12 and the MR6 would go. And I'm also showing on this diagram the area shaded in gray towards the back of the site. That's the extent of the surface parking for this development. It's entirely away from the street. It's tucked away in behind the building. However, it's insufficient. The bylaw requires, I believe, 6 more stalls than what we're able to provide back there, and so that's another area of relief. Finally, what you can't see in this plan, it's difficult to depict in a plan view, is the requested relief on the habitable space requirement. So the bylaw requires that if you have structured parking We really want to see active uses, lobbies, entrances, elevator vestibules, all those components of an apartment building out towards the street and occupying a good portion of the main floor instead of just parking. We attempted to meet that and came 1% short at 24% instead of 25%. So relief is needed in that respect as well. Finally, just the highlights of the supporting studies. A functional servicing report was prepared by Stantec, and in it there is a grading plan that confirms that the floodplain requirements can be met. The site can also be serviced, though some improvements are required, and we would expect those to be conditions of further approvals. A planning report was prepared by GSP Group and submitted with this application. It analyzed the applicable provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, regional and city official plans, and determined that it fits well within that framework. This is a development that intensifies a site that's planned to accommodate growth. The analysis goes further into the details and confirms that each of the requests are appropriate and justified given this unique site. A shadow impact analysis was submitted and determined that the development does not generate unacceptable shadow impact. So that is not to say that there won't be shadows. There will be shadows on adjacent properties, but they move across those lands and they provide for adequate sunlight exposure that meets the city's requirements. Finally, a noise feasibility study was done by HGC Engineering, and that study confirmed that transportation noise from Herb Street can be mitigated through the detailed design of this site, and no stationary impacts are expected. So that concludes the formal portion of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Heather. Anybody have any questions for the delegate? Councillor Durrell.
Thank you, through Mayor Jaworski. I've got a few, if you don't mind me just rolling through. Okay, awesome. First off, this Herb Street, and part of the presentation you're making is that it is
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, there is not commercial proposed as part of this development at this time. It is purely an apartment building, which is also permitted by the designation.
And why? Why no commercial?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, the developer is not inclined to implement a mixed-use building, but that is some feedback we could take back if that is of importance to this council to see that accommodated in the design.
If you could go back a couple, if you wouldn't mind, I'm looking for a number.
Stop me when
that's not me. Houses on Moore Street. And so what I'm wondering is, when we look at the diagram that you did where it's like, here's the ones that are, here's the 12-story and here's the 6-story, what I don't see are the homes on Moore Street and how they're affected. So is it the first 2 to 3 homes on Moore Street that will have the 12-story in their backyard? And then the other 3, how does that work?
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, I can do my best on this slide, but the tall portion of the building would be in this area. So it would be abutting only this one adjacent house on Herb Street, 119 Herb Street.
Right, but on Moore Street, they're going to look in at that, right, in their backyards. So how many houses on Moore Street are looking at a 12-story in their backyard is what I'm asking. Is it just the first 2 houses, or is it the first 3 houses, first 4 houses?
There are 2 houses here that are adjacent to the 12-story portion. And then these houses here would be adjacent to the 6-story portion.
Okay, great. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, okay, so, and what kind of buffer are you proposing between the houses that are on, oh, you can stay there.
Okay.
If you would like. What is the buffer? Now, it looked like, actually, you might want to move forward. In the design that you're putting forward, there's a driveway that goes along the side. So what will people, if they're looking through their backyard, which is now a green space and apparently a boat as well, what will they see?
Okay, I am going to actually advance to the slide that shows the plan, because I think that shows it the best.
That's great. Yeah, so here, okay,
Sorry, I can go back to that one too. So what we have here is the interface. This is the one house that it's adjacent to on Herb.
Right.
The setback is to this building line from the property line that's about here. So there is a landscape buffer of 1.5 meters there.
What does a landscape buffer mean?
That would be the planting zone. So that would be where we would be able to accommodate vegetation.
Like trees?
1.5 meter would be insufficient for trees.
So shrubs?
Potentially shrubs.
Okay.
And these details will be further developed through the site plan
Totally
process.
get that. I think this is the ward that I represent. So it's important to understand exactly what we're getting into here.
Sure.
Okay.
So likely there would be a fence along that property line as well.
Okay.
Through the site plan process. That 1.5 meter landscape buffer, and then the driveway, and then a walkway, and then the building.
Okay. So if I live on Moore Street and I'm second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth house in, and I'm standing in my backyard at the edge of my property, am I looking at a fence? Are there the fence and vegetation? Plantings?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
And just to clarify on that point as well, the landscape buffer is increased towards the rear of the site. So this landscape buffer is sufficient for tree planting in this area.
Okay.
So these 3 houses on Moore, you can see the edges of those property lines. They would be facing a larger landscape buffer in that area.
And I see there's a retaining wall. How tall would that retaining wall be?
Through you, Mayor, I don't have that at my fingertips,
Okay.
but it is actually to retain the grade as you go down to the parking structure.
I see.
So it doesn't raise up. It's not additional wall that the residents are facing.
Okay.
Rather, to retain the grade as you drive down that ramp.
This might be a question for the architect, but if you want to go to the rendering, one of the questions that I always like to hear an answer from is why this building? What was the inspiration behind it? What do you hope people will see, feel, get from this building? So.
Well, I might need to defer to the architect on that one.
Totally get that.
I think this is kind of to give an initial sense of the aesthetic, but this is also something that we plan to work with the city on and receive input on through this process and through the site plan process. So I would consider this more a depiction of the scale, and the details of the architecture I think could come along when we have some feedback from the city.
Okay.
Do you want the architect to respond to that further?
If they'd like to, that would be great. Just wondering what their inspiration was behind the building. It looks like there's a lot of glass in front, and we tend to see a lot of stepping back in Uptown when it comes to higher developments, and this is like straight up. So just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Hi.
Hi.
So I think the intention is to break down that tower form at the front by doing a little bit of stepping in the 2 levels. But as Heather said, it is preliminary at this point in terms of fulfilling the density requirements. And to give a bit of a canopy and a lower main entrance to the building that does give some interest along the street edge and provide a more interesting access to the building instead of just a standard entrance.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I see there's a rooftop terrace on the back end, is that correct?
Yes.
And I guess you don't have any plans on that. You can't tell us anything more about it at this time then?
Through you, Mayor.
A baseball diamond, I hope.
Yeah, I will talk to Aaron about that. I think that has not been developed yet. to be quite frank.
Okay.
It would have some amenities for the residents, and the details beyond that are to be developed.
So who's gonna live here? Who do you want to see live here? What's the plan there? Who's your market?
Through Mayor Jaworski, I'm not sure that I could answer that. I think it's a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, which could appeal to quite a number of people. Unlike other applications, this is not one that's geared to a particular demographic. So it is not a retirement building, and it is not a purpose-built student development either. This is an apartment building with a mix of uses, and that could suit quite a number of people in the market.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any further questions? Or let Heather go. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
2 more delegations on this topic. Dominic Bellissimo. Welcome, Dominic.
Mr. Mayor, 51 more. Some of my neighbors haven't had much time to prepare for getting all the neighbors together, but I'd like to start off first of all with the plans, the elevation. So if you, just to have a better understanding of the property, back of my yard, I have a 6-foot iron rong fence at 6 feet. The top of my fence is lower than my patio, okay? And then if you look at the parking lot of the water tower, their parking lot, their visitor parking lot, it's even higher than my patio is. So basically our backyards are in a bowl with, you know, the one side near the water park being much higher. Okay, so that's just so you have a picture of what we're talking about. The retaining wall is one of the things we noticed on there is that I'd like to know where the retaining wall, first of all, will the retaining wall be a separate retaining wall or will it be structural? Will it be part of the extended underground parking? Okay, that's something that you guys should look about. And the other thing is, where is ground zero? Because there's so many different elevations. Like for instance, if I'm living on the first floor of this building, is it at the same level as the back of my backyard, okay, as opposed to where my patio is? Because if it's in the back of my backyard, we're adding more meters to the total elevation. So if it, you know, if it's going to be like 20 meters, that might add another 2 or 3 or 4 meters when I'm looking at it through my house, right? So that's something that that probably should be looked at, okay? And that will change all the setbacks, right? They're looking for changing from 10 to 8.5, and if the height goes up, that's even worse, right? My property, and it'll be 119, where their drive was going to be. I only have, because she talked about privacy and buffer area. I'll only have between the back of my property is only 1.5 meters. I like to know anybody that is going to put what type of fencing, what type of privacy I'm going to have with only 1.5 meters. If I'm sitting on my patio, I'm going to either see cars driving back and forth, I'm going to see into people's you know, apartment. All right. Like right now, I'm looking into water tower, but it's so far away. It's far away, you don't notice it. And originally that property had the front part had 200-year-old trees. And when I first moved there, you would even notice the tower because there were the trees there. As soon as the tree down, so an elevation is if you look at the planning, it says that the lowest point in that whole area is the south west corner of the property that's being developed. Actually, the lowest part is in my backyard, because my backyard, the southeast corner of my backyard has a culvert. 10 years, right? And so what happens, and when it rains, even this last April, it rained a lot, and we're not just talking about a trickle. If you actually go where the culvert is, it's like a running creek. Okay, I like to know where all this water is going to go. Backing onto the back of the property, all are more avenue. Okay, so that's something that should be looked at. The other thing is, I noticed, I was looking at it this morning, the original, and I came to the City Hall this afternoon. If you look at the original floodplain, and it draws the floodplain at the very front of the property, and I don't know how that's possible. Because first of all the backyards are really low, and it has it running to where the water tower is there. And from what I understand, I don't know whether that was filled in, but from what I understand from a long time ago, that was called the DeWitt Hill. So I'm not quite sure how a hill could be the actual floodplain itself. So we're now moving the floodplain really should be into all the backyards on Moore Avenue, as opposed to that would be the northwest corner of the property. So there's something wrong with the GRC plan, the floodplain plans. And last year I went to the meeting where they said that some of them haven't been done in 20, 30 years. So that's maybe we should be waiting on that, or somebody has to really kind of look at those plans again. The other thing is about lighting. First of all, it'll bring more lighting just in terms of security poles and everything and stuff like that. But I'm also talking about lighting from cars. You have a driveway, so now so if this goes through, I will have a road in the front of my house, and I will have a driveway. We will all have driveways at the back of our houses, because those cars have to drive along our backyards and then enter the back. So that means that, if I'm sitting, at nighttime, at 9 o'clock at night, sitting on my patio, there's going to be cars coming and going into the apartment. With 94 units, 120 parking spaces, there'll be traffic in my backyard and in my front yard. Okay, I don't think anybody here wants to live in a situation like that. I also noticed on the plan there's a garage door on the east side facing our backyards. Okay, I know what happens from time to time. There's lots of people from Water Park, and they have a parking lot on the east side, but it's a visitor's parking lot, and and usually there's only like 3 or 4 cars. But sometimes when somebody's leaving late at night and they have their high beams on, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and somebody's talking in the car, and they put it comes right through my bedroom, and I have California shutters in the bedroom, and you can see the light. Okay, this line with full consideration for all the adjacent properties. I know we're looking at, increasing density in a downtown area. Okay, why do we have to go from a high density? So the tower is a high density, the homes are low density. Why can't we leave it at MR4? Why can't that be a medium? Why can't we have a transition? Why do we have to go high tower, low homes? Why can't it be high tower, which is there now, medium density, and that means leave it at MR4, the whole thing. Leave the back part at MR4, MR3 or MR4, and change the front to MR4 and build no higher than 4 stories. Okay, that's increasing density in the downtown core, but because what happens is that we go to a high density, and then the people, 20 years down the road will say, oh, there's another tower, let's build another tower, and let's build another tower. Okay, so I understand that we live, I don't own the property. In an ideal world, I could buy it and turn it into an arboretum, but that's not going to happen, right? But why can't we leave it as, go to medium density? Okay. And then on top of that, also the environmental buffer. It is a wetland, I think if you were to build 4 stories or stacked townhouses, you would have less impact on the actual environment itself. Okay, you wouldn't need underground parking. You could have above ground parking, or like townhouses with garages. It'll be on one level. It would be less impact. Okay. In terms of the shade, you know what? I looked at the shade plans with some of my neighbors. Because the building is closer, and I understand what's acceptable. It's, you know, it's okay. By a lot of my neighbors, actually, because of the angle, I'm 51. I have at least a little more sun, between 4 and 7. Then all my neighbors south of us will have very little sun. It's usually between 5 o'clock, or when kids come home to play in the backyard, and you know that's what's unacceptable. Well, you know, I might have 4 hours of sun, but it might be early in the morning. I'm not going to be on my patio at 4 o'clock in the morning or 6. Yeah, and then in terms of, you know, the other thing is, if you look at the shade analysis, it's only dealing with the 2 towers in isolation, right? So you can say, well, the towers only give me 4 hours of shade. There's mature trees there. Like I have 200-year-old trees in my backyard. My neighbor has a 100-year-old tree. So there's already shade throughout the day. So you can't just take those 2 buildings and look at, you know, what the shade we get in isolation. Okay, I'm not going to cut down the tree so I get more sun. I'd rather they don't build this huge tower. In terms of parking, they only have so much visitor parking. Will they start parking on Moore Avenue? There's already tons of parking on Moore Avenue. Okay, and then traffic. I think, you know, because it's a one-way, people leave that apartment, okay, you know, especially if they're going, say, uptown Waterloo or into Kitchener, they're going to come out of Herb Street and they're going to turn right onto Moore Avenue. And that is a really, really bad intersection, in the sense it's probably one of the only intersections, and I own not a 90-degree corner. Actually, cars come spinning around that at 70, 80 kilometers an hour. Okay, my back tires, if I'm backing out of my driveway, can be on the road, and there's no cars. I won't see any cars. And maybe increase in parking, and yeah, and I think that's all I have to say for that. So I think, you know, in conclusion, what I would like to say is, but why does it have to be high density? Why can't it be medium density? Why can't it be stacked townhouses or 4-story? That's, you know, that's where I like to see it go. I mean, you know, we're in an urban area, we're not uptown Waterloo. Like, it's not going to be empty. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. You're pretty much exactly on time. Questions for the delegation? And if none, I think there's probably an opportunity for you to I think, get more on your well prepared with a bunch of questions. They can help explain that. Probably setting up a time would be best once we've gotten further along. Thank you, Dominic.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, last delegation, Jerry Gagnon. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you. Jerry Gagnon, I live in Water Park. I've been there for 13 years. And I'd like to thank the City Council and the staff for inviting us here. Mind you, it's unfortunate that some of our residents did not get an invite. But anyways, in reviewing the proposal, and I'm looking at it now from water park perspective, not your perspective, which I've talked to you several times. But that the development company has requested 11 exceptions to the city guidelines. I presume that this request is required to fit the 94 units in 2 lots. And that are facing Europe. Mind you, there are 2, the lots are large, they're deep, but that's watershed, and that's 8 to 9 feet different. Quite a drop. And so anyways, what I'm trying to say is that if this development is approved with 11 exceptions, does that set a precedent then? What about the next one's going to come? Are they going to want 12, 13, 14 exceptions? When does it stop? Why do we have guidelines if it's all we're going to do is have exceptions upon exceptions? I can understand maybe 1 or 2 small exceptions, but my God, this is a whole page full. Okay, as far as parking goes, I agree with you on parking. I didn't think about more. I was thinking more about the coming into water park for parking, or going to church park and the overflows. What happens when it snows? Not much room there. Okay, why 94 units? That's exactly like, why 94 units? Is it because there's somebody wants to make a lot of money on this? You know, it's only 2 lots with a deep background. I understand that we have to have some leverage when we see these things built. I have a concern that is this a bait and switch type of situation where the proposal is going to be passed and they're going to pass to have all these things approved, and then they're going to sell the property after it's been approved? And how are we as residents going to know that that building is going to be built on that lot to these specifications that we hear today? Because what you have now is whether or not you're going to pass these guidelines, these exceptions to our guidelines. How do we know it's not going to be a bait and switch? We Waterloo residents are left really with whatever is approved. And, you know, everyone is making decisions, but in the end, we are the one that's going to be living there. It's going to be our quality of life. So please consider the facts before returning your decisions to a larger development organization with no ties to our neighborhood. Thank you.
And just to let you know that, and I think we have questions for you, so come on back. City of Waterloo has the special meetings, the informal public meetings, to introduce such projects. Oh, okay. That was the same thing, it's just to let you know, no decisions being made tonight, it's just a chance for everybody to hear all different aspects.
This is just my input into it.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, Jerry. And with that, I think that was all the registered delegations. Is there anyone else present here tonight who wishes to speak to this application? We've had one side, we've had the other, and I think that's it. If there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. And just, Councillor Durrell, please.
Mayor, just if everyone can make sure they sign at the very back. Hemlock,
Register.
no, Herb Street East. And then the next time we have, if we do have a community meeting or the formal meeting comes forward, we'll be able to contact you. So, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Oh, We lost quorum. Wait for Ange, as long as she's not hanging up. I think we know who's here. This is an informal public meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1711, 257, 263 Hemlock Street, Innate Sage 10 Developments, Inc. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by Council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, anyone who signs the registry at the back will receive notice of the formal public meeting. The planner will now provide a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski, members of council. I will attempt to be brief. It's been a long evening. Zone change Z1711 concerns 4 properties in Northdale on Hemlock Street. The applicant is Innate Sage 10 Developments. I'm sure council is familiar with Innate and the Sage products. Mr. Furston of Innate's Developments is here this evening, and he's also joined by Dave Galbraith and Joe Somfay of IBI Group. The photo's a little outdated, but it is as current as I could acquire. The properties in question are here on Hemlock Street. Across the street is 275 Larch Street, which council might be named to council for a bonusing application last fall, also known as the block. There is a 4th building under construction in this location today. To the south of this property, also on Hemlock Street, is Sage 6, another 6-story building constructed by Innate Developments. And then, of course, the Laurier School and church also on Hemlock Street, fronting onto University Avenue. There is a public path connection that is at the south side of this property between the proposed Sage 10 development and Sage 6, and then heading towards Albert Street, which is adjacent to, I believe, Sage 8, if I can keep track of all the sages. In terms of the official plan and zoning bylaw, of course, it's located in Northdale, the specific provision area. There are a number of policies that apply only to Northdale. This property is designated low-density residential, allows up to 250 bedrooms per hectare, and a height of 6 stories. Bonusing is contemplated in both the Northdale specific provision policies as well as our parent official plan policies. In terms of zoning, the entire parcel is zoned holding, Northdale mixed use 6, so allows up to 6 stories. The holding requires a number of technical components, and the maximum density is the same as the official plan, 250 bedrooms per hectare, and height is measured in meters at 20. In terms of the amendment, it's a very straightforward request. The applicant is asking for additional density. They're asking for density bonusing. 79 additional bedrooms for a total of 151 bedrooms. In exchange for that increase in density, they're offering $10,000 per bedroom. And then as part of the application, they are also asking that the holding symbol be removed. This is the concept site plan submitted with the application. Hemlock Street at the top of your image, a number of residential, if I can get my cursor, a number of residential units fronting directly onto Hemlock Street with patios. Entrances also into the interior corridor system. There are 2 amenity areas at the back of the main floor, and then there is cantilevered parking as well as open air surface parking. The driveway access is at the south side of the property, so if we just off this image is the 3-meter wide pedestrian pathway that would separate this property from the Sage 6 building. And then a rendering which shows us Sage 6 at the left, bottom left of the image, and the proposed building, Sage 10. Similar size, not as long, but the same height, 6 stories. This Sage 6 does have commercial units at the south end of its building. This building does not propose to have any commercial units. In terms of the submitted studies, there are a number of studies that are required when you seek to lift the holding symbol in Northdale. So the transportation, the servicing, the functional, the stormwater management, the noise study, the wind opinion letter, and urban design brief are related to the site plan components, and the planning justification report, which outlines the nature of the application as well as the offer of bonusing in exchange for those extra bedrooms. In terms of staff's review, we'd be looking at those reports as part of the H-lifting component, and then we'd be looking at the bonusing request independent of that, as well as any comments that might arise during the review process. Thank you, Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Does any councillor have any questions for staff? Questions of clarification? Seeing it, it's getting late. I would, but Councillor Henry first.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Trevor. I realized after I'd looked through the submissions I'd seen publicly and through yours that, well, I saw some reference to, in the urban design brief to, the materials would be yada, yada, yada. They weren't actually specified. I'm wondering if you have more information than I do in that respect, from what I can glean. Would be considering as part of our review, because it's hard for me to tell what that means, just sort of looking at the image.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, to Councillor Henry, I'm sure Mr. Somfay or Mr. Galbraith can elaborate on this, but generally speaking, you have a mixture of course, windows, glazing, get my cursor going here, a mixture of railing systems, which I believe are aluminum based. You have some eaves, which has the sort of S shape, which I will attribute to a desire to label the building as a stage building, as well as the darker charcoal, and of course on this face, which we can just see, predominantly eave face. And then the canopy is again, another aluminum panel system projecting over the entrance.
And I imagine, urban design, compliance and fit is going to be part of your review.
Absolutely. Any application that comes through Northdale, because of the H symbol, the urban design component, the site plan component review is primary focus for staff.
Okay. I'll save other questions for the applicant as you suggest.
Other questions from the council? So thank you very much, Trevor. New delegations, first up, David Galbraith, IBI. First up, IBI. Sorry, didn't have my microphone on. Just want to make sure everybody who's tuned in gets to hear everything.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Jaworski and members of council. My name is Dave Galbraith of IBI Group, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Innate Developments, who are proposing to develop the properties municipally known as 257 to 263 Hemlock Street. I'm not going to go over everything that Trevor's already talked about, so I'll try to be brief tonight. It's been a long meeting. But in terms of an outline, I'll go over the context of the property, the concept itself, the proposed density bonusing proposal and zoning bylaw amendment, studies completed to date, and then I'll open it up for any questions you might have. So Trevor mentioned there's the site is 257 to 263 Hemlock Street. It features 4 single detached residences that would be demolished as part of the development. The entire site is designated low-density residential and zoned HNMU 6, and it's subject to the neighborhood frontage requirements of the official plan, zoning bylaw, and urban design guidelines. In terms of context, I call this a sage block. We've got Sage 6 just to the south of the site, Sage 8 to the west of the site, and then the 275 Larch Street project to the east. Also in very close proximity to Wilfrid Laurier, both their buildings north of University as well as south, and Waterloo Collegiate Institute to the northeast. So the proposal itself is for a 141 residential unit apartment building, which will feature 15 studio, 116 one-bedroom, and 10 two-bedroom suites for a total of 151 bedrooms. The building will feature rooftop amenity space, gym, lounge, secure bike storage on the ground floor, and an amenity room. Private entrances will be provided to all ground floor units from the street. As you can see on this rendering, I've tried to zoom in a little bit on the artist's depiction here. They'll all feature private terraces along the ground floor as well. In terms of parking, the site or the proposed development will meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw with respect to parking, with 39 spaces provided, as well as 40 bike parking spaces, which the majority of those will be indoors. Oops. So here is the development concept again of the artist rendering of the proposal as it stands right now. And as Trevor had mentioned, the design of the building, materials of the building will be refined through the site plan process. So the application is fairly straightforward. As I'd mentioned, with the exception of the density, all other site standards conform to the bylaw and the official plan. The request itself is to allow for 79 additional bedrooms through a Section 37 agreement or bonusing. In exchange for each additional bedroom, the applicant's proposing a $10,000 financial contribution to, guess what, the Waterloo Park Festival area, which, enough said. And so for the 79 additional bedrooms, the total contribution would be $790,000. So just the rationale, I'm sure this is something that was going to be coming up through Councillor Henry's comments. The official plan contemplates the use of density bonusing in the Northdale neighborhood where it's appropriate. One key reason for why we believe it's appropriate in this instance is the building itself will conform to the height requirements, the parking standards, all setback requirements of the zoning bylaw, even with the additional density proposed. It will achieve a high standard of design through the site plan process, and that will be refined through that process. Also, the adequacy of the financial contribution, the $10,000 is similar or higher to other density proposals that have been accepted by the city, including Sage 8 to the rear of the site and 275. Again, it's important to note those two projects because they both were recipients of density bonusing and they're within, well, they're adjacent to the property. Also, in terms of the types of units, it will feature studio, one-bedroom, and two-bedroom suites, so it will appeal to a broad age range of audiences and at different budgets for students as well. So, following that, these are the list of studies that have been completed to date. Trevor's gone through that, and yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you, David. Questions for Delegate? Councillor Henry.
This is more of a note in terms of, related to my previous comment, expectations coming back. I've heard that you expect some refinement through site plan. I appreciate that, but I would imagine that an understanding that all the pieces have lined up to be in compliance with where we're going. Certainly, I've seen a high standard of design from many prior Sage products along Hickory. I'd expect a site that's requesting, effectively double the density, certainly within what's contemplating to meet the standards we've seen before, right? So I say that to say that as much as anything else.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, thank you very much, David. Our last delegate. Welcome, Darrell, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you for having us tonight. Thank you for reviewing this proposal. I don't have much to add. I just wanted to be here to answer any questions that you might have. The only other thing I would add for the concept of this is there's been a lot of development in Northdale. We know that. That was the plan, to have a lot of development in Northdale. But I always like to think of it as a unit or a bedroom is not simply a widget. Each one is unique and different. And at Innate Developments, we're knee-deep in the neighborhood, and we're always looking for what the next thing is, the product that's missing, the thing that's in demand that we don't have yet. And the thing we identified most recently is basically these one-bedroom units. So the concept being mental health is a big thing for students, and we want to make sure that they have lots of different business. do is to live. This isn't for everyone. This is just for people that want this particular product, a product that we believe is virtually non-existent in the neighborhood, so we want to add this here. So we're talking like a 465, 475 square foot, one bedroom unit. Plus we're also adding a new product into our product mix that we haven't done before to try it. We're doing studio. They're 320, 330 space. We're trying to really follow a model of what major urban centers like around the province and around the world are doing in creating smaller places for people to live to make them more economical while having amazing amenities close by so that people have places to socially interact but can come back to their own private space. So that's the only thing I wanted to note. Other than that, let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Daryl. Reading through the notes submitted by your rafts of consultants, I saw one sort of line in there around take-up in terms of leasing of your prior units as it related to, in part, the product you were thinking of here. And the number that caught my eye was sort of the 50%, non-student sort of leasing number in those. I'm wondering if you could, elaborate more on some of what you're seeing there in the market, and it was referenced in some documents.
Through Mayor Jaworski, we can't control who lives in these buildings, but we're trying to create spaces that anyone can live in. We know we're right next to the university campus. We know that's going to be a primary target audience, but we're trying to expand the market further so that we can have us age 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and we need to attract non-students to live there as well. So we do a lot of marketing efforts to attract non-students as well, both by creating units and physical spaces that work and just advertising and marketing towards non-student demographics. So we have seen all of our buildings like a pretty part of the academia that's around there, and potentially non-students that are not part of the academia that's around there. And we think this new product type of this sort of 500-ish square foot one bedroom unit is highly desirable to that young professional, and there's just not a lot of it in Waterloo in general, and specifically there's virtually none of it in the Northdale area. We recently had approvals and started construction on our Stage 8 and 9 projects, which were predominantly these one-bedroom units, and the demand was so incredible, both from a buyer perspective and a tenant perspective. And then we looked at the whole universe of how many bedrooms there are in sort of the Northdale universe and how few fit this category and how big the demand was, and we're just trying to sort of fill that void of what's in demand and what's missing.
Certainly appreciate the elaboration. I know this is something that Town and Gown and universities and others are trying to track down and understand numbers. So appreciate some of the elaboration, and I do hope we can count on some cooperation and support as we try to identify what's going on out there when you're on the ground and we're a few feet above.
For sure, you know where to find me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other councillor have a question? Seeing none, thank you very much, Daryl, and thanks for your patience for tonight, all the agenda.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here present tonight who wishes to speak to this application? Glenn? No, Glenn? Not interested? Okay, thank you. If there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a late. Under other business, we have one new item, the all council meeting minutes. We need to move a motion to approve those. Councillor Henry, Councillor Durrell, all those in favor? Thank you. Enactment of bylaws. Someone want to move some bylaws? Councillor Burke loves that stuff. Councillor Henry. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Veith, Durrell. Thank you.